closely with the speak quickly. You're able to really rally to the occasion in a quick amount of time to make sure all of our kids were safe. So if I could just have the Fernley area principals stand up so we can give them a round of applause, it would be awesome. And moving on, sir, I also attended the NASB meeting. As you know, I serve as one of our directors on NASB, and so we had a nice breakout session to talk about our upcoming legislative session, which I'm hoping all of us can attend in March. That's going to be, you probably have a flyer for it in your packet of the materials. And I believe Margaret was going to send out an email as well, reminding all members to pre-register. You do need to register if you want to go to the meet with the Legislators Day on March 5th, the Capitol. It's a really great chance for us to talk with our legislators and talk to them about some of the legislation. One of the things that we looked at in the NASB meeting was that there's already over 200 bills in progress affecting education, some good, some you may not agree with. And so I think it's important that we go and talk to them and make sure that we're there. They are also offering another training session, which I know some of you availed yourself of when we were last month with some of the governance training that's available. And this is the part 3 that helps you establish your, as you know, every first and third year on the board, you have to establish so many hours of continuing education credit. So this goes a long way towards it. Then I want to give a nice shout out to Mayor McIntyre, who's with us here today, because he and I have been to several assemblies this week, and we have several more to go. We established the new Mayor Citizenship Awards, and we've been to a couple of schools, and the assemblies have been awesome. The kids, I think, were really surprised that we were acknowledging for their attendance and their behavior and their efforts in the classroom. So thank you again, Mayor, for helping me out with that on your calendar. I know it's pretty full, so that's nice of you just to take the time to do that. And then last but not least, several of us a few weeks ago attended a nice walkthrough orientation by Hug High School for their General OTC program, where they kind of showed us the logistics that we would need in place to pursue a General OTC program for our own high school here in Fernley. We came away with some great answers to our questions, logistics wise and infrastructure wise. And I'm happy to report that we're going to move forward with the application to apply for a General OTC program at Fernley High School. So we may come into play, thank you. We may come into play where I'll need the board's approval when it comes to financing and funding that program as we go down the road, but we're not quite there yet, but we probably will be. So that's what I got, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Bowl.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Since the election, like Dawn, I attended the NASB conference in Reno in early December, and then another training session that was held in early January, where there were some really good presentations, very valuable information for new board members. And that included a great presentation by our own Bridget Peterson at that event. One of the things that was driven home to us during that event, and it really strikes home with me as a board member, to resist the temptation to try to get involved very heavily in the day-to-day operation of the district. I'm kind of a hands-on type of person, and so I'm going to do my best to resist that temptation. I joined a tour of Yerington and Smith Valley schools a couple of weeks ago with Tim and some of the staff members. Got to know some of the administrators there and visited some classrooms. It was very informative. The day before yesterday, or yesterday it was, I toured Smith Valley and Yerington schools with Rachel Stewart and Lisa Shea, and toured the special education classrooms there. Very eye-opening and very sobering for me to see what's going on there. Huge shout out to the teachers and all the paras that are working in those rooms and working with those children. It was really a cool thing to see. Lastly, last week I attended a Yerington Lions Club meeting where they had a speech contest going on. And there were 7 speakers there, all coming from Amanda Aldridge's class at Yerington High School. Every year, Lions Club International holds a speech contest for kids around the world, and it's a pretty intense competition. But a big shout out to Amanda Aldridge for incorporating that public speaking section into her English classes at Yerington High School. Pretty hard to overestimate the value of being able to gather one's thoughts and articulate those. And she makes those kids do it. Public speaking obviously is not a real popular thing with most human beings, but she does a great job with them, and huge shout out to her for that. That's it.
Ms. Peterson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Everyone's already talked about the training, so I won't mention that, but that was great. And there is another one coming up on March 6th, orientation number 3, and this one's in Carson City. So if you can attend that, that would be great. Also, I wanted to thank the Silverland Middle School leadership for our cute little bags and presents they gave us, and Mr. Henderson for our other present he gave us. So thank you. We love that. And that's everything I think I'm going to report on tonight.
Mr. Whistler?
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to talk about the training since that's been, December 17th was mentioned. That was a crazy day for all of us here in Fernley. Especially trying to find ways around because all the sheriffs decided to post right outside my neighborhood. So thank you for that. I got to do some off-roading to get home. But I would like to say, can we all give a standing ovation to our law enforcement for what a wonderful job they did for us that day? Thank you. So last year, right before Thanksgiving, I was able to go down. I wasn't yet on the board, but I got to go down to Smith Valley and get with Principal Matthijs and just walk around the school down there. And I was really impressed with it. And I think my favorite thing was their agriculture program and how they're raising turkeys. So it being Thanksgiving, I had to buy a turkey and it was absolutely delicious. It was my first time cooking a turkey. So you'd have to ask my wife how it came out. I don't know. I didn't deep fry it, so our house didn't burn down. And then was able to attend a lot of the Fernley High School football games and some booster events and stuff. So I'm looking forward to being out there and serving you, the citizens of our county, and also the teachers and the students of this area. I think we got a really good group here, and we're really looking forward to serving you. Thank you.
So I'd like to give a shout out to the Dayton High School cheerleaders. They went to an event and got first place. I believe it was national. What is it? Jam, okay. But great showing for them. I was also able to attend the NASB workshop with Trustee Bowl and Trustee Peterson and Trustee Carson and Trustee Farr. So that was great. I was on board governance. So they talked about how to be an effective board. Going forward, making changes. They've done a study nationwide and done presentations all across the United States and the world, presenting their material. So very good. And thank you for the book. That was one that was recommended by Phil Gore, who was the presenter at the NASB workshop. So thank you so much. So also in my school walks yesterday in Fernley, which were great. I mean, we had a great assembly over at Silverland. So that was good to see all the 7th and 8th graders there, and the award that was given for citizenship by Trustee Farr. It was good to see all of that and the enthusiasm from the school. I was also informed by one of the participants there, one of the teachers, that our wrestling team got 5th place here in the state. So with only 5 participants, only 5 people on the wrestling team, where other counties, other districts had brought as many as 20. So a big shout out to them for doing so well. So moving on to the superintendent report. Oh, excuse me. Attitude of gratitude. Okay, so you guys bear with me, please. Go ahead, Dawn.
My name is Nico Pierce, and I am successful at Silver Stage High School because of Mrs. Conley. They helped me succeed by never giving up on me, helping me with math, and making me feel wanted in her classroom.
Jerry?
My name is Hannah C. and I am successful at Silver Springs Middle School history because of Mr. Palmer. I want to thank him for teaching me in a way that helped me understand the subject, but made it fun as well. And now he's doing that with my 2 older brothers. Good luck, and we appreciate you so much. Hannah Chambers.
Trustee Farr?
So my attitude of gratitude is, my name is Leanna Burstis, and I am successful at Cottonwood Elementary School because of Mrs. Diffenderfer. I want to thank her for helping me in 2nd grade on any subject if I needed help. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to learn from you.
Trustee Bull?
My attitude of gratitude is from William Fraud, says, I am successful at Smith Valley because of Mr. Wake. I want to thank him for being such a good math teacher. He is always helping and making sure we understand in a fun way. He also has really good jokes that he is not afraid to tell us.
Trustee Peterson?
All right, mine is from Asia, who is successful at FHS because of Miss Rash. I want to thank her for always having an uplifting attitude, and I love your Miss Frizzle vibes.
Trustee Whistler?
My attitude of gratitude is, my name is Safira, and I am successful at East Valley Elementary School because of Mrs. Giannotti. I want to thank her for always being there when I need it and helping me learn.
Superintendent Logan?
Perfect, I'll go. Good Jackson here. My name is Levi McGregor, and I am successful at Smith Valley Schools because of Miss Kozia. I want to thank her for always being kind and funny and always look forward to coming to your class. And I think it's really fun. You're the alpha.
My attitude of gratitude says, my name is Rocio Rangel, and I am successful at my school, Yerington Elementary, because of Mrs. Bake. I want to thank her for helping me, teaching me, letting me have fun, doing science, being nice.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. My attitude of gratitude is from Kelia Tumono Vow. And I am successful at Dayton Intermediate School because of Mr. Manning, or Coach Manning. I want to thank him for being a great inspiration to work hard in school, sports, and to salvage friendships. Mr. Manning has helped me laugh when I was not comfortable to laugh or have fun. Mr. Manning has also helped me to be athletic and feel that I'm having a great time at school and basketball. He has also helped me to be kind to people who have not been kind to me. Mr. Manning has also inspired me to work hard in school so that I will have a successful future. Mr. Manning truly is the best teacher, and my brother likes him too. Superintendent's report, please. Mr.
Mr. President,
Oh.
I was wondering, before we go on to public participation, do you think we could move it out and move the agenda item on public participation up so they could participate in the meeting?
So the order is the superintendent's report and then public participations after
So
that.
it's right after.
Okay, but I'm just hoping we can do that so that the public can participate.
As soon as Superintendent Logan's done with his report, we'll have public participation.
Well, I think what she's asking, if I'm not mistaken, is
Yeah.
to have a vote to see if we can change the way public participates in the meeting, so they can do it after each agenda.
Uh-huh,
I think that's what she's getting at. Is that right, Sherry?
that is what I'm asking.
Okay.
I have a question that we already approved the agenda and already seconded and voted.
Yes, so the agenda as published is what's in front of you, and that's what the public is expecting. And so any out of order items might impact people that are coming at different points in the meeting, anticipating that things are going in a certain orders. There isn't any item that says that there's a flexible agenda to let the public know that that's a possibility. And so my advice would be to follow the agenda as it's written.
So the second paragraph in the agenda that we approved states that subjects may be discussed or considered or upon which any formal action may be taken are as listed below. Items do not have to be taken in the order shown on this meeting notice.
So
that-
if there is a notice that there's a flexible agenda, somebody can move to accept a flexible agenda.
Okay.
And you can take a vote. Yeah, and then you can take things out of order.
Just as a point of order, Mr. President, I'm okay with discussing flexible agenda items, but I would like to get through and offer the superintendent a chance to give his report before we go into.
Definitely, he's going first.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Logan.
Thank you. Welcome to the new board members. Very excited to have you. And I know that you're going to learn the ropes as you go a little bit. You've been watching, but it's different when you're sitting up here. And so we'll bear with us and we'll bear with you as well. So one of the things is our technology. We just got it up. So anybody that's on Zoom, we're sorry that it's been a delay, but we are up and running, is my understanding at this point. I'm going to start actually with our student rep, Jackson Han Holds, who's our, and I messed that up, didn't I? Who's our Fernley High School student body rep. And I also just want to point out that UNR is doing a PBIS conference, kind of Northern Nevada. And he is going to be one of the student panel members that's going to be on there representing the rural counties. So anyway, Jackson.
Thank you. So we have a lot of exciting things going on at Fernley High School recently. Last week through the Nevada Association of Student Councils, it was Nevada Peace Week. And we decided to celebrate that by hanging up positive messages on sticky notes all around our school, covering all the lockers. And all of our students really enjoyed this. I would be scrolling on Instagram and I would see people posting it. It made me really happy seeing that our students were really enjoying these positive messages. It was really affecting their day. And that kind of worked out because January is also a mental wellness month. So that Nevada Peace Week event kind of doubled up with mental wellness month. So it was super cool because we were also able to share that on the Nevada Association of Student Council's Instagram page. And then we also got to see what other schools were doing to celebrate Nevada Peace Week throughout the state of Nevada. This week is also Winterfest, so we are having events almost every single night. Last night there was a really great game for our boys and girls basketball teams against North Valleys. It was super fun to watch, great games. And for our event tonight, we're having a dodgeball tournament at our school. It actually starts in 2 minutes. And that's always a really fun event that our students love. It's $10 for teams of 10 to enter, and our students always really enjoy it. Tomorrow, we're having a movie night in our library where we get to watch Willy Wonka. Our Winterfest week theme this year is a sweet adventure, so it's all candy themed. Our spirit days have been, today was Mike and Ike, so you have to dress as twins. Tomorrow is Lifesavers, just as a superhero. So our students are really enjoying that kind of fun theme. So that's why we're gonna watch Willy Wonka at our movie night. And then we're having our dance on Saturday. It's being put on by the sophomore class. And it's going to be all candy themed. We've been working on those decorations. I'm really excited. I think it'll be really fun. And we're having our Winterfest pep rally assembly next Friday because we don't have school this Friday. And assemblies are always really fun, so I'm really excited to kind of play some games with my student body. And I think we're also going to be coming to the intermediate and middle schools, so it's always really fun, especially SMS has a lot of great spirit that they bring to those pep rallies, so I'm super excited for that. Thank you.
Jackson. Phil for our administrators at Fernley High School, because that's a whole lot that they got to be at as well, but we're appreciative of them helping our students out. I want to thank the Cottonwood Elementary School staff for setting up chairs and taking care of us and hosting tonight, and also for Chartwell's for the meal that they provided. As far as superintendent report, I did go to the State of the State Governor's address, which was a needed experience for me, my first time there, but that was neat to see him and how the speech process kind of works. We do have the legislative session starting on February 3rd, and that's when things get really rolling for us. I'll personally be going to and presenting on February 5th to the Senate, and then on February 6th to the Assembly. And we're going to be speaking on INVEST document, which is kind of our stance of what we need for federal funding, or not federal funding, for the state funding. And so we'll be speaking to that INVEST document. You guys have had a copy of that. If you need another one, I'm more than willing to give it. Talked about infrastructure, mental health, funding at an optimal level, those kind of things that we're asking for from superintendents. And again, the NASB has also embraced that. And then, as you felt this morning, there was a big rush that kind of happened with the temporary pause on federal grants and loans. That has also been temporarily blocked while we figure that out. But the last message that I kind of heard was our Title I funding and special education IDEA was not necessarily going to be affected by that, but there is a potential of other grants and things that could be affected. And so we've got our things in order. We've been pushing them off to the State Department to make sure we get through what we can. But there may be some things that are affected as we move forward. Again, it's 10 hours into this, so don't have all the answers at this moment, but I'll keep you informed as I have them. With that, that's the end of the superintendent's report.
So,
Thank
right, sorry,
Go
so if I could. I just want to make sure that if you're going to go with the request the flexible agenda, that you just need a motion to adopt a flexible agenda, a second, and then a vote.
Okay, Mr. President, I motion that we adopt a flexible agenda, okay, for the meeting.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. You might want to remember to ask for discussion from your board.
Any discussion?
I would suffer. What's the problem with the agenda as it's laid out? I don't understand why it needs to be jumped out of order when we've all prepared for our meeting, what the agenda is set. The public has been notified as the agenda is set. Why the need for a change?
It's just so that the public can participate, because we're going to let them participate on every agenda item.
We haven't passed that motion to repeal that policy yet.
That's what I said. That's the one I wanted to bring up.
I just think she's trying to get greater public participation in our meeting. So I myself, I'm for that. I'm always for greater public participation, so.
Mr. Hendricks? Mr. President, sorry. Just 2 points. I think for new policy, it has to have a first and a second reading before it's
She is
enacted.
correct.
And also, if you do that, you have to do public participation as is listed and then do the agenda item so that they can participate, because it won't have changed before you talk about it. But then there's a first and second reading as well, so.
That's a very good point. I think we're going to have to go with the agenda as it's written,
Because why?
because we need a first and a second reading on any policy change.
Oh, okay.
Very good point.
That is a good point.
Okay.
Okay.
So moving on to agenda item number 12, public participation. 12. Items listed on the agenda. At this time, the public is invited to address the board on items listed on the agenda over which the board has jurisdiction. If you wish to speak, please step up to the front table, be seated, and state your name. Your comments must be limited to no more than 3 minutes per agenda item, with a maximum of 10 minutes total. In consideration of others, avoid repetition or designate a spokesperson to speak on behalf of your group. Although this board does not restrict comments based upon viewpoint, comments will be prohibited if the contents are willfully disruptive, slanderous, amount to personal attacks, or interfere with the rights of other speakers. Comments made during this time will be monitored by the board president. Would anyone like to speak?
Neil McIntyre II, friendly resident. I wanted to talk about, well, first of all, I wanted to welcome all the new board members. Congratulations on being on the board. Hope you guys are going to do a great job. And remember that it's always about the kids first.
It's a different view, isn't it, Neil? Much different.
It's not a different view because I was here before I was there and now I'm back here, so. But I do wanted to say that I appreciated all of you guys as board members. Everybody up there gave a great board report on what they were doing. The conferences that you guys went to, the things that you guys have been learning. I mean, those are great steps, and it's good education for the public to see what you guys are doing behind the doors. You know, we hear about it at the board meeting only. We don't hear about it any other time. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys as board members. They were very informative on all the stuff. And the school walkthroughs that you guys do are super important. You know, I got to do some of those as well. And, you know, look to your mentors. I mean, there's some people up here that are been up there for a long time. You can look to them for information and guidance. So I just wanted to thank you guys. And item number 20, I think it's a great thing. I was not in favor when we changed it last time. So I hope going forward that this comes back. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Carson, I just want to remind you, you do need to be the timer. All right, thank you.
Also, Ms. Carson, just from experience, I usually set 2 timers, one for 3 minutes, one for 10 minutes, because they have up to a 10-minute. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jim Davis. First, congratulations on our new school board members, Elmer Bull, James Whistler, and Don Carson. I understand that you're in for a lot of hard work, and my prayer would be that you and all board members serve the interests of our county well. In the past, I've certainly made my share of criticisms of the board, and the most common theme that was that most board members didn't act to improve the district because they wouldn't acknowledge that there were any problems to be tackled. The public was told that we have the best district in the history of districts and everything was great. Now that the makeup of the board has changed, I beg each of you to not shy away from calling a problem a problem. Only then can you begin to working for improvement. I'd like to let you know
I'm
that
sorry to interrupt, and I don't mean to at all. Is this an introductory statement to getting to an agenda item for public comment?
this is for agenda item 33,
Thank you.
a request for future board meeting topics. I'm sorry, I neglected to say that. First, Nevada schools rank near the bottom of nationwide quality of education assessments. Here's how Nevada ranks overall, with some additional western rural states for comparison. U.S. News and World Reports, 45th. World Population Review, 48th. Schoolaroo, 48th. Education Week, 50th. Forbes, 45th. Wallet Hub, 42nd. In every case, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana are ahead of Nevada. So that's a snapshot as to where we stand compared to other states. So how does Lyon County compare to other school districts in Nevada? U.S. News and World Report ranks each of Lyon County's 4 traditional high schools in the bottom quartile. In order to avoid actually naming who's at the very bottom of the list, U.S. News doesn't actually provide a specific ranking, but like they do for the top 75%, but rather they just state that they are in the bottom 25%. Additionally, all schools districts in Nevada participate in criterion reference testing from 3rd through 11th grade. The data is posted at the website called Nevada Report Card. I don't wish to dwell on the details and the numbers, which are included in my written comments that I'll turn in. You can see the web links and the actual data. But the overall takeaway from those criterion reference testing compared to other school districts is that in 2018, Lyon County was a little below average. And by 2024, our district is way below average of other Nevada counties. In closing, our district has a lot of opportunity for tremendous improvement, and I'm confident that this new school board will make these huge strides. I'm very hopeful that the board will take up initiatives and make changes to 1, improve academic performance, 2, improve public engagement and transparencies, 3, improve teacher and staff morale, and 4, improve school safety.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Agenda. Does anyone else wish to speak during public comment on agenda items?
If you do come to the front and just state your name and you could speak if you want.
Moving on to agenda item 13, the consent agenda.
Mr. President. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have some. On our hirings, I just feel like
So it passes 6-1 with trustee Parsons voting nay. Are there any abstentions?
We're done. If you don't mind interrupting here, what was just approved was 2 of our employees, and they are here tonight, and I'd love to introduce them to the board, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I thought I heard.
6-1. Trustee Parsons voted nay.
The two that were approved out of that list that are here tonight, one is Stacy Cooper, and she was hired to be the new deputy superintendent starting on July 1st. She has many years of experience. I'm not going to go into all that, but most recently she's coming from Churchill County. She was the deputy superintendent there. And so I'd like to introduce you, and actually maybe just wait one sec and I'll introduce both at the same time. That way we got them coming through. And the second one is Skylar Tremaine, and she is our new communications and public relations officer, often called CAPRO or PIO. And she just graduated with her master's out of marketing from UNR, and has a lot of experience. She has family roots in Fernley, Yerington, Smith Valley, even I think a little bit, but if I could have both of them come up and introduce themselves to you. And one thing, don't trip over the cords. And I do want to say we're still struggling getting the Zoom up, and that's not fair for us to throw that at Skylar here at the last minute, but we're trying to work through it. So thank you.
So moving on to agenda item 15, acceptance of donations.
Mr. President,
Yes.
uh,
Trustee Peterson.
I move to approve a donation to East Valley Elementary School. Sorry, I got to blow it up. I can't see it. In the amount of $1,704.81 from the Dolan Auto Group, as well as a donation to Silver Stage High School for $600 from Travis Edgar and $600 from Sunbelt Rentals for lights and labor costs.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Farr. All in favor, say aye.
Mr.
Aye.
President, we need discussion first
Discussion,
before we
yep.
vote. And can you restate the motion in a second for Ms. Heim?
So Trustee Peterson motioned that we accept the donations from Dolan, was it?
Something.
Dolan Auto Group. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Acceptance of the donations passes unanimously. Moving on to agenda item number 16 for possible action, committee appointments. Discussion and possible action to appoint the board representatives to the following committees: the Debt Management Committee, NASB Committee, CTE Committee, School Safety Committee, NIAA Committee, NNDA Committee, Lyon County Human Services Committee, and Student Absentee Advisory Board, SAAB. So per policy, board policy BCB, says the board president will appoint all committees. So the appointments I've determined will be Debt Management Committee will be Bridget Peterson as the trustee representative with Don Carson as the alternative.
Mr. Hendricks, my job doesn't allow me to travel to Yerington to do that. I'm sorry.
Your what?
I'm not going to be able to do that. My job, I can't drive all the way to Yerington for those meetings in the middle of the day.
Okay. You like that one? Management? Okay. So the management committee, the trustee representative will be trustee Bowl, and the alternative will be trustee Carson. For the NASB Legislative Committee, the trustee representative will be trustee Carson, and the alternative will be board president Hendricks. On the CTE committee,
Mr. President,
yes,
just as a point of order, you as serving as the board president already have a slot with NASB in your role as board president. You would have to assign a director and an alternate director. And it's not the NASB Legislative Committee, it's just the NASB Committee. Legislative Committee is an internal committee within NASB.
Yeah, that probably should be fixed. I'm sorry, Mr. President. May I speak?
so I have a seat at that table already.
Yes, sir.
This is for the NASB director.
Legislative committee.
Yeah, so I think that's a misprint. I think it's supposed to say NASB director. Because on the NASB committee itself, they form their own legislative committee.
No, I'm just reading from what was printed out on the agenda.
Yeah,
It
it's
says
supposed to
Legislative
say
committee.
director, NASB director, that's what it should read.
So I am a director is what you're telling me?
You're a board president. There's a meeting twice a year for board presidents as opposed to under NASB. If you remember last year, sir, I served in that in lieu of Mr. Cooey couldn't attend. So I went in his place, and you can assign a director and an alternate.
So the year before, yeah, President Cooey was the representative.
I think Bridget can explain it to you because she's a
Yeah,
ex emeritus, so she can
yeah,
explain
so
how it
let me,
works out.
let me clarify. So each district provides to NASB a director and an alternate. And I think what Mr. Farr is referencing that the director goes to all the meeting and votes in what our board would like them to do for NASB. The board president has the opportunity a couple of times a year to attend a board president specific training in which you would go to that. So if you are not the director or the alternate, you would not be attending all of the NASB joint meetings.
Well, I'm really not willing to give up that alternate position. I think I can certainly do both.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave it as it is. Yeah, so no, it's NASB Legislative Director will be trustee representative will be trustee Carson, and the alternative will be trustee board president Hendricks. The CTE committee, the trustee representative will be James trustee Whistler, and the alternate will be trustee Bull. School Safety Committee will stay with Sherry Parsons as the trustee representative, and the alternative representative will be trustee Whistler. The NIAA Committee trustee representative will be trustee Bull, and the alternative representative will be trustee Peterson. The NNDA trustee representative will be trustee Farr, and the alternate will be trustee Bull. Lyon County Human Services Committee, the trustee representative will be myself, trustee Hendricks, and the alternative representative will be trustee Parsons. The School Absentee Advisory Board, the trustee representative will be trustee Farr, And the alternative will be trustee Peterson. I tried to divide all of those up evenly, so. So I guess I'll ask for any board discussion.
Just a quick question because I've never served on that committee, Mr. Hendricks. What is the NNDA?
Northern Nevada Development Authority. So they talk
Okay.
about business opportunities that are coming to Northern Nevada.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Are you aware of what the Student Absentee Advisory Board is?
I am. Thank you.
You do a great job on that.
I'll probably pick your brain a little bit on CTE, so you can kind of give me where you're at.
Not CTE.
Yeah, on the CTE, now that I'm on there, so.
Sure.
I'll email you later.
You'll want to take advantage of this month. We have meetings coming up. Mr. Giannotti can put you on the calendar for next month is CTE month.
Awesome, thank you.
So agenda item number 17 for possible action.
Mr. President, we might have to have a motion and a second on the committees.
Okay. Motion to approve that.
See,
I'll move that the committee assignments as you laid out are approved by the board.
I second.
I second.
So I have a motion by trustee Bull and a second by trustee Whistler. Any comment by any discussion? Any discussion by the public?
The public doesn't provide discussion at this time. They already had their opportunity for this.
So all those in favor,
aye.
Aye.
Nay.
opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding Goodhart Wilcox Health Curriculum Adoption and Purchase for grades 7 through 12. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Education Services, James Giannotti.
Thank you, President Hendricks, members of the board, Jim Giannotti for the record. In December, we provided public access to instructional materials for general health courses at the middle and high school. These materials were available for the public, parents, and stakeholders to review from December 9th through the 18th in each one of our middle and high schools. We did not receive any feedback from the public, parents, or stakeholders, which we view to be a positive thing in terms of there was no negative feedback. We are asking that the board approve these materials for adoption so that we can provide our teachers and students with updated instructional materials and improved instruction in the area of health. At this point, I'm open for any questions.
I was just going to make a comment. I looked it over and I feel like any health class could probably use it. It's very clinical and I think it's not controversial, which I think is great.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. I'm sorry. Did you have a question? Okay. I did submit a question and you answered it
Yes,
because I
sir.
wanted to know if the public got a chance. And for the public, when these things come out, we highly encourage you to take a look at the stuff and then give the feedback because we're here for you guys and we need that feedback so we know what your thoughts are on this. So we can get the job done and get what needs to be out there for the students. So thank you, Mr. Giannotti, for answering those questions.
You bet. Mr. President.
I think trustee Peterson was next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I was actually just going to move that the Board of Trustees approve instructional material adoption of Goodhart Wilcox Health Materials for middle and high school.
I'll second that motion.
I'd like to just thank Mr. Giannotti. I did get an opportunity to review the books and I'm really glad that they chose those. I was looking obviously for anything that, might not be appropriate for the children of Lyon County, and I didn't see anything that I didn't like. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
choice.
You bet.
So going back to, I have a motion from trustee Peterson and a second from trustee Farr. Is there any public?
No, board.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Number 18 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a perimeter fencing bid for Yerington High School, Fernley High School, Dayton High School. This item is presented by Executive Director of Operations, Harmon Baines, and Operations and Maintenance Supervisor, Kirk McCollum.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. For item number 18, we're bringing forward a perimeter fencing site and exterior door improvements project. As many of you on the board know, this has been long over. You good? Can I speak louder? I'll bring it closer. All right. As many of you know, this has been a long overdue project. It's a project that we've been working on for quite some time now within the district. As with all requests for proposals, the district followed NRS 338 with publishing this project. We received one bid, which we are seeking approval for. It was with Simerson Construction. This project provides numerous benefits, enhancing overall security, safety of all three campuses. It provides fencing, doors that encloses campuses and forces all visitors to enter through the front door. These improvements also allow controlled access outside. So during emergencies, our staff and students are still able to get successfully and productively outside. Modernizing fencing, doors, and concrete will also enhance the aesthetic appeal of our campuses while creating a more secure and welcoming environment. So we are open to any questions you may have.
Trustee Whistler.
Yes, you did answer a question that I submitted, and then I kind of have another one. For the other one, though, in May of 2024, during the meeting, it was supposed to be 4 high schools that were getting this, and now we're saying that there's only 3. What happened to the 4th one?
So Silver Springs High School already received fencing. So there was a concern with their football field and parents and community being able to get right up to their football fields for their games. So due to that concern, we ended up doing fencing and kind of enclosing that campus in advance. So Silver Springs was removed.
Okay. The other one that I asked, and I just want the public to be aware of this, is there's only 3 weeks between the pre-bid conference and then the one bid we received. I'm wondering why we didn't try and extend the bid with all the areas that we have between Reno, Carson City, Fallon, Fernley, why we didn't extend the bid a little longer to see if we couldn't find 1 or 2 more companies that could get us closer to what we were originally quoted at, I believe, 1.5 million.
Absolutely. Mr. Russell, we very much appreciate the question. So we were able to be prepared and provide good feedback. We did, again, we followed NRS 338 with all our publications. We put the publication in the Las Vegas Journal, Reno Gazette Journal, Lyon County, I forget, newspaper, whichever one, and the contractors board. So we published this in several different spots. We hold a pre-bid conference, which isn't mandatory for all contractors to come and review with the architect and with our team. However, that was about, I think, a week or 2 after it was initially published. So contractors did have several weeks to make a bid. There are several other reasons as well that the price was higher than the original budget back in May 2024. For one, the door replacements. So in the initial budget did not include door replacements for Fernley High School and Dayton High School. It was realized that the brushery and the trees right on top of our doors is causing damage, along with, decades of abuse going in and out with traffic. So that was an addition to the project. In addition to that, removing the brushery and removing the trees and redoing the concrete that's been destroyed was an addition to the project. And finally, the asphalt repair. Over the summer, we had an instance where in Fernley High School's campus where the football field lost power. And we had to dig up, our team had to dig up a Christie box that was buried under the ground. It was a 50-year-old Christie box that had aluminum wiring. So it became a project it became a big project pretty quick. And while we are able to do a lot as a district team, significant asphalt projects we are not able to do. So we wanted to take advantage of while we were getting personnel on our site to kind of get that asphalt done as well. So,
Okay, thank you. And one last thing. So is the project is one company doing everything, right?
Correct. So it is a general contractor,
Okay.
which is going to be hiring out subcontractors. So for
Okay.
example, which is very important. So we had lots of discussion on the subcontractors. Those essentially are the ones that do the project. So we looked at the fencing company, which is Artistic. They're a very reputable fencing company. We looked at the concrete company, which is Morgan, very reputable concrete company, which we already use district-wide. And that's while Simerson is the general, they are going to be hiring out those subs, and we are very pleased with the subs that have been presented.
Okay, and with those, was it cheaper to go with one company doing all the subcontract or subbing out the contracts? Or would it have been cheaper to find other companies to do all that on different timeframes or within the midst of each other? Just curious.
Yeah, in our experience, it is cheaper to go out and have one
Okay.
general managing all the contracts. For one, we don't have the window to be able to do such work. We get approximately 60 days over the summer to get as much of this work done as possible. So trying to piece it together and having several different entities, and we don't have the personnel to manage that either. So,
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Harmon. I appreciate it.
of course.
Trustee Carson?
I just want to know the time frame. He asked all the questions I was going to ask you, so what is the time frame?
So upon approval, we're going to sit down and really iron out a timeline for the project. Again, majority of this work is going to be done over the summer. It is in front of the entrances of all schools. A lot of the fencing work will get started. However, the concrete work we cannot do because we'd have to close out significant portions of traffic. And when you have a campus of 1,300 kids, you cannot tell them you can't use the front door. So a lot of it's going to be done over the summer. And when we have a hard deadline, we will definitely share that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Harmon. Will this bring us closer, or will this put us right at that single point entry that we were trying to get to?
So district-wide, we have modified single point entry in all our elementaries and middles. But we are getting closer to it. Again, the goal is to funnel everybody to the front door. We don't want people going around our campus. We don't want them entering through other doors. We have hundreds of doors throughout the district, and we want them to come in through the front one where our administrators, our secretaries, and our SROs, when they're on site, have clear access to see who's coming in and out.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. I noticed there is 7 tasks or 7 different contractors that are listed in here, and they have a percentage associated with their work. So with the general overseeing all of those, he's going to mark up all of their costs, correct?
Yes.
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 Do you know how much he's going to mark that up?
That we get one price that is going to be cost on us. That $1.9 million number is the number, unless there are change orders required throughout the project. What they mark up, what they make is entirely their business. We do not know.
So if we were to manage the project in-house, we would see that savings of that percentage of markup. Is that correct?
In theory, yes. However, we would need several additional personnel to manage such a project.
We need a project manager.
We would need multiple project managers with specialities in those fields.
And so I did notice that, the lag, this was, this fencing was approved in May, and then it wasn't put out to bid till December. I wonder if you could explain why the lag of 6 months.
So the budget was approved on a preliminary rough order of magnitude back in May 2024. After that, we had several site visits with Paul Cavan, architect personnel. Jeff Purcell is our lead on that. We had several meetings with Loomis and Associates to make sure that we're doing everything the way we want it done. We had several meetings with our administrators, walking these campuses, making sure as because essentially we're going to be directing, for example, Friendly High School has 1,300 students. We're going to be directing them within the campus. So we wanted to make sure that the flow was appropriate with the administrators for their campuses and how it was supposed to work. So these things, unfortunately, do take time to iron out, to be done effectively and well. We try to get them done as quickly as possible. However, that is the time. It does take time.
Mr. President, were you done?
Now I have a couple more questions. Cool. So I'm looking at each one of the individual base bids, which, I mean, you stated in here there was $1,986,300. That was kind of hard to find in here as to what actually represented that total, but I did a handwritten note on the project bid tabulation sheet down at the bottom. Showed that, so it was based on the base bids, I assume.
Correct. We are bringing forward, we are requesting approval of the base bid. Again, we just never really know what pricing can be with these projects. So we wanted to see what else we could possibly squeeze into the project and to keep it affordable. However, as you can tell, the cost for all the other alternatives were significantly higher and in our opinion, not worth the money to bring forward tonight.
So if you could in the future, maybe make that a little clearer for someone like me to be able to understand where these large numbers are coming from, you know, what the sums are that represent those. It'd just be helpful to me, maybe some of the other trustees.
Absolutely.
So I did compare each school based on what was presented in May of 24 by Cavan, and looking at Dayton High School, in May it was 300,000, and this base bid is more than double that at 643,000. So, and then Fernley High School in May was 476,000. That's more than doubled to 1,044,000. And then again, it looks like Yerington High has almost doubled from 176,000 to 299,000. So please explain that.
Absolutely. So again, when initially in May, when we requested that budget to be approved, it was specifically only for fencing. What we're bringing forward today is the addition of the exterior doors, which we believe need to be taken care of due to safety concerns. They're struggling to remain closed or remain open as needed. And the addition of the asphalt at Fernley High School, which needs to be paved, along with all the removal of the brushery and the trees in front of both Fernley High School and Dayton High School. They're causing issues with the doors, in addition to the concrete being destroyed, which is a significant safety concern of ours as it should be. So those additions have caused this price increase. And as I'm sure we're all aware, the last 12 months, Northern Nevada has not slowed down, and the only prices just continue to creep up for these types of services. So
that's why certainly when we approve something here, I would like to see it go out to bid, request for bid as soon as possible. I think that's can mitigate that problem.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Anderson, if I may, the reason we wanted to put this forward was for transparency. We wanted to put it all in one bid. We did not want to have to do the concrete and then do the fencing, and then do the doors. So doing those separately would have been inefficient for us to do. That's where combining it into one project under one general contractor made sense to us. However, we absolutely agree. We will try to be quicker with these turnarounds moving forward.
Okay, just to be clear, you've referenced in your background information that this was May 23, 2024 meeting. Trustees approved that we move forward with fencing, exterior improvements for the 3 high schools. I went back and I looked at the motion that was made, and it only covered fencing. So exactly when did the board approve the exterior doors?
Exterior doors are an item that we try to take care of as soon as we know the doors are going bad. And in this case, there are significant cost associated with them. That's why we've included them. Our CIP has exterior doors on it. So as the board approves the 5-year CIP, there is line items on several different locations for exterior doors.
So you're telling me you don't need to come before the board to get approval to spend the money?
If they're over $100,000 and I have to go out to bid, I always have to come in front of the board for approval. However, if there's a door that I need to replace, that is a safety concern, then it is not over $100,000. I do not have to come in front of the board for that approval. That is something that as superintendent and I are able to make that decision with school administrators.
Certainly, it just seems like the scope of this project is greater than the doors itself is greater than $100,000. So that's why.
Exactly. That's why we included it with this bid.
All right. Trustee Bull.
I'm fine.
So. Trustee Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate it. It's exciting to get all of this work done and make the schools look nice. And sometimes it's hard to wait till summertime, but wait we shall. So thank you. I would like to move that the Board of Trustees approves Simerson Construction LLC's base bid of $1.9863. I'll say it the right way. $1,986,300. Sorry, whoa. And Loomis and Associate Construction's staking and materials testing proposal of $73,450, resulting in a combined total of $2,059,750 for LCSD perimeter fencing, site and exterior door improvements.
I'll second that motion.
So Trustee Peterson has made a motion that the Board of Trustees authorizes the approval of Simerson Construction LLC's base bid of $1,986,300 and Loomis and Associates Construction staking and materials testing proposal of $73,450, resulting in a combined total of $2,059,750 for the LCSD perimeter fencing site and exterior door improvements project. And that was seconded by Trustee Bull. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I just don't forget to ask for further discussion before the vote.
From
us.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And mine was an aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 19 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding the Energy Services Company ESCO request for qualifications for HVAC boiler energy projects. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Operations Harmon Baines and Operations and Maintenance Supervisor Kirk McCallum.
Mr. President, members of the board, for item number 19, we're bringing forward Train as the sole Lyon County School District Energy Services Company provider, ESCO. LCSD issued a request for qualifications just in December and opened bids middle of January. We only received one submission for this as well. The RFQ was published as a part of a district's due diligence process, providing an opportunity for other consultants to bid on the work currently being performed by Train. This solicitation does not indicate any dissatisfaction with Train. They've done remarkable work with us as we've done over the last summer with Cottonwood Elementary School and Sutro Elementary School HVAC replacements. The recent RFQ truthfully reaffirms Train's turnkey program is the best solution for the district's needs. And this will just allow us to continue to work with Train. Will give us more access to Train as their cost to do the preliminary audits was kind of solidified with no cost to do those initial work. Again, we are open to any questions you may have.
Trustee Whistler.
Yes, Mr. Bain. Thank you, Mr. President. About 2 years ago, I remember when this got brought up in, I think it was April of 2023. And one thing I brought up was that Train, as big as they are, they weren't a triple B accredited, and there were multiple complaints online that never got fixed. And I know at that time that kind of put you in a bind because Ms. Parson called you right back up from your seat to ask questions. So with that, it has been almost 2 years, and it looks like we're slowly getting some of this HVAC stuff situated in some of the schools, which is good. From Train, what are the guarantees that the district has from them if the equipment breaks? Guarantees as in cost? Is it under, like, how long is the warranty? And then also time efficiency, because some of these big companies, oh yeah, we'll get to it. And 2 years later, you're finally getting your AC or your heaters fixed. So with that, what are those guarantees and whatnot?
Absolutely. So first, I'd like to touch on the Better Business Bureau accreditation. That is an optional thing for all companies to be a part of. You do have to pay a fee to be Better Bureau business accredited. So being not a part of that, being not accredited through them is not necessarily any sort of a implication of poor business practices done by them. Also, online, they show a residential air conditioning contractors. We're not working with the residential side. We are working with their commercial turnkey side with Omnia Partners. As for your warranty question, the Train in the past has and will continue to provide a industry standard 1-year labor warranty along with a 2-year parts warranty. They have a local, this was very important for us on our RFQ. We did not want somebody not local coming to support us as needed. So that was a must in our RFQ process. And Train does have a local based out of Sparks, Nevada support team. And after that Sparks, Nevada support team, they have a team probably about 10 times their size based out of Sacramento. So every time we've had any sort of issue, they've been right on top of it. They've been great to work with, and we have no complaints with either their equipment in early life or their service thus far.
Thank you. And so far, just for my curiosity, what schools have already been taken care of with the new HVAC system?
I would have to either put that on Mr. McCallum if his memory serves him right, but I know 2 big ones, but we've purchased a ton of equipment and put them up. So I'm gonna toss that his way.
Okay, so Train did Cottonwood last summer. They did Sutro last summer. We've bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chillers from Train installed by us. We've had Savage and Son come in and do the plumbing. We've done the rest. So that covers FES, one of the buildings at FIS, YIS, and YES. And then we put 2 new Train units at FIS gym. We installed. So there's quite a few that we've done in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a handful more we're going to bring next month and the following month after that as well. We have several projects that we're finishing up right now.
And
so
everything's working good and everyone's happy with the heat and the cooling?
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
So I'll take a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that the board approves Train as a Lyon County School District Energy Services Company at no cost for preliminary audits and assembling of budget costs.
I second.
So Trustee Bull makes a motion that we accept the presentation on energy services and request for qualifications for HVAC boiler energy projects. And trustee Whistler seconds. Is there any further discussion by the board?
Mr. Hendricks, you can just say a motion by, you don't have to restate the motion unless Ms. Hines doesn't quite catch what we say, then she might ask you to restate it.
Am I gonna know if she caught it?
She'll say something, she'll flag us down. So
Okay.
if you
Flag me
want,
down?
just to save time, you can just say motion
Okay.
was by,
Okay, there we go.
Just- yeah.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 7-0. I'm going to take a short recess at this moment. About 10 minutes.
Easy though, don't you think?
Wait, just got to.
It didn't work. Well, I guess it is working right now.
The only thing that I would say is what they did on some of the others is they would get elaborate and say things that weren't even said. So if you just keep it simple, you know?
against Gavin.
So I'm calling this meeting back to order at 8:09. So moving on to agenda item number 20. This is for the Board of Trustees to approve revisions to LCSD policy BDD, board meetings, procedures, notice, and agenda as a first reading. Being presented by myself. So in June of 2023, the board majority voted to remove public comment during agenda items. The public came forward and voiced their concerns for removing their voice during those critical times, and when the board is discussing agenda items. The board majority at that time decided to ignore the public. I believe the voice of the community is critical in our decisions, and we should give them every opportunity to speak. I'm proposing a number of changes to Lyon County School Board Policy BDD as a first reading. I'm proposing that a board member, staff member, student, or citizen may request an item to be removed from the consent agenda with the exception of personal reports for any reason. The removed item will then be discussed and voted on separately following the approval of the consent agenda. I am also proposing that electronically submitted public comment will be added to the minutes of the meeting. Finally, I am proposing that the board will allow comment A at the beginning of the meeting on items listed on the agenda on which action may be taken and heard by the public, or B after the agenda item on which action may be taken and discussed by the public body before the public body takes action on the item. The public may choose to speak on items listed on the agenda for action by speaking under either option A or B, but not both. So I added the additional comment, just a little background under NRS 241.021, provision number 3. It says the provisions of subsections 1 and 2, which are in this case were listed as A and B, do not prohibit a public body from taking additional comments by the general public in addition to what is required pursuant to subsection 1 and 2. So that's why I've added this. That way that people that come here and want to speak on agenda items but have a time commitment and don't want to stay during the discussion on agenda items can do that and leave, or if they would rather speak while after the board has had their discussion, they can do that, but they can't do both. So it gives the public options. So I'm opening this up for discussion. Trustee Farr.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I've read all your revisions, your proposed revisions as a first reading. I'm just going to talk about the first part, which concerns the consent agenda. And here's my concerns. Number one, you cannot have a consent agenda item, which will include, but are not limited to, including student disciplinary action or immunization exemptions. Those are both covered by FERPA and HIPAA and cannot be publicly discussed. So asking for someone to remove an agenda item that may contain that information and then open it up for the board to discuss would be, I believe, in danger of causing privacy violations of both those laws. So I think that needs to be stricken, that those, including your personnel reports that you put in, because you put in there very clearly, with the exception of personnel reports, I believe is the way you worded it, it should include also student disciplinary action and immunization exemptions due to those laws. My second point would be that if you're going to put in there a board member, a staff member, a student, or citizen, what's the point of elected representatives? We are the representatives of the people. We were voted by the people. We listen to their concerns and bring their concerns to the board meetings. I don't believe a citizen in the public in the gallery should be able to raise up their objection to a consent agenda item and ask for it to be removed and discussed later. That's what they have you as a board representative for. I believe that the wording should be a board member may request, and that's it. That's all we need.
I feel, go ahead, trustee Bowl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry. In addition to what Board Member Farr just said, I think in attending a number of school board meetings over the last year or so, one of the things that I've seen is well, let me go back. There's a process when someone has an issue or concern about something on the consent agenda. There's a process that's available whereby that can be made known to the staff prior to this meeting. In fact, I think they have up until noon on the Monday before the meeting. And that gives the staff an opportunity to provide an answer both directly to the board member and then, of course, relayed through this meeting as well. I think that is really the ideal way. And I think any concerns from the public or staff member, if they want to bring it through a board member, I think that's the appropriate avenue to travel with that. Because then it gives a chance for the staff to respond. Whereas if someone comes up, pops up in the middle of the meeting and has a comment about that or asks a question, and it's something from the extensive financial sheet that Kyle prepares, it's not fair to them to try to answer that in the meeting. I think it all should be done. If there's concerns, when people see and read the backup material for the meeting and they have concerns, I think that should be brought forward through a board member who then can address it to the appropriate staff and come up with an answer. I just think I've seen meetings where questions were asked and it was either Mr. Rodriguez or Mr. Baines had to say, because of the in-depth item, they said, well, we need to get back to you. Whereas if it's brought up beforehand and brought up by a board member, then there's a chance to answer that.
Trustee, who is first? Trustee Peterson.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of points I want to make. Just looking at, and I am perfectly fine with the public comment stuff, just noting that if it says that they choose A or B, but not both, just that the clerk will have to keep track of who speaks when, if they're not allowed to do both. And for the other part about the consent agenda, a couple of concerns. I hear what Mr. Farr and Mr. Burl are saying, and I too say perhaps any removal of any confidential information, whether it be a personnel report, a HIPAA report, because today on our agenda, we also have requests for early graduation, which is confidential. So anything confidential in nature should not be allowed to be pulled off any agenda and discussed. And then I am thinking about this agenda item, asked multiple districts across the state if they know or they allow public members to pull agenda items or have heard of anyone that does so, and no one does that practice. I just think it needs to be reminded for everyone here that this meeting where the board members get together is a business meeting of the board, and it's a business meeting where we pass budgets, we take care of curriculum, all those things. And because we do receive funding from our tax base, the publics are allowed to attend and give feedback. What this meeting is not is a public meeting that the board members happen to attend. And there's a very big difference there. So to have a board meeting with our agenda and to allow any member of the public to come in and manipulate our agenda is highly unconventional. And I really don't think it's a very good idea at all. They have means to have their voices heard. And also, it's interesting because I've been on this board for a very long time. No one has ever tried to pull a consent agenda from the public until very recently. So it makes me wonder, exactly why this is coming up. And I hope it's not because of a single individual or a special interest group or something, because it's really, in my personal opinion, not the right move to allow the public to manipulate our agenda item for our business meeting. Thank you.
Trustee Whistler?
Yeah, so what Mr. Bull was saying and where I kind of disagree is, more on the public comments. I think it's important that the public hears what we talk about in our discussion and then ask their questions, because there's been times where I'm sitting there and I didn't really have a question until something was brought up from the presentation and then the board member discussions. And so some of these questions are not always going to be able to be asked ahead of time by the board members or the public. Some questions are just on the fly. And I think it's important we give the public that opportunity, because with being able to speak before or during and at the end, we got to remember we do work for the public. They voted for us. We have to hear their voice. And some of these parents, don't always get a chance to go through the agenda 3 days or 4 days before this, with multiple kids and maybe multiple jobs. So questions might not arise until the day of the meeting and the presentation of the agenda. So I think it's important we keep that in mind. I know I was highly against the change of it back in 2023. And I would say 99% of the public that stood was highly against it.
Just as a point of clarification, you're talking about the public participation part on agenda items, not the consent agenda.
Yes,
Okay.
the public participation.
Because I'm okay with going back to the way it was.
Okay.
But my point is the wording on the consent agenda of who can ask to be removed, I'm against that altogether.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
Trustee Parsons?
Yeah, up until about a couple of years ago, it was always on here that anyone could remove anything from the consent agenda that wasn't private information. So it was almost like, instead of using the consent agenda for efficiency, it started to be used to hide things. And so now we want it to go back the way it was. And the only thing that I would change in there is I'm with you, Mr. Whistler. I think people come with their kids and they're tired, and I see, like, if they've got kids, they will leave after a little bit because they can't wait till the end of the meeting to talk about something that's not on the agenda. So we need, what I would like to see is on this to move that towards the front instead of at the back. That if anybody wants to talk about anything right at the beginning, let's just get it out of the way and let them go home. So, but anyways, yeah, a consent agenda isn't to hide things. It's for efficiency.
Trustee Peterson?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I've been on this board a very long time, longer than Ms. Parsons, and we have never, ever allowed a member of the public to manipulate our agenda and remove items. It has never, ever happened. Sorry.
Was it written on there? I never seen it because early on, we never used it to hide things.
Ms. Parsons,
Yeah.
we've always had a consent agenda. A consent
Yes, we've
agenda is
always-
for, I'm speaking, please. Thank you.
Okay.
A consent agenda is for business that we don't need to discuss, little items that take a long time, that we can just get them and do them, like IT tickets and travel reports and all those things that we don't need to talk about individually, or our meetings would go until tomorrow. So we've always had a consent agenda. We've
Yes.
never had the public pull items from the consent agenda, and they've never been used to hide items. It's
Yeah.
all in a public meeting. I completely disagree with you.
There have been multiple things pulled from the consent agenda.
By the request of a board member, not by the public.
It used to be, before you were on here, Mr. Farr, that it said that the public could do it also. Just go back and look at the old meetings. They're written and you can see it, or you can listen.
Did you have a comment, trustee Farr? So you spoke, trustee Peterson, that you'd gone to other boards and asked them. I think simply going to the county seat and asking them how they do their agendas would have answered that question. I believe the Lane County Commissioners allow the public to pull items from the consent agenda, don't they? I'm at,
If we allow public comment on that, it's up to the board to decide whether or not to pull it.
Okay.
But they've opened it up.
okay, by vote, okay.
Sorry. Scott Keller.
Scott Keller for the record. At the Lyon County Commission, what we do is during public comment, we allow public comment on the issue, but it's up to the board whether or not to pull that item. So you let everybody talk, and then you guys can decide whether or not you should pull that for discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Keller.
Mr. President,
Comment?
I was going to make a motion.
I have to-
I'm just wondering, how would I do that to make a motion that we put, like, you know how you put it at the back, things that aren't on the agenda have to be waited till the end? How can I put that on here? Can I make a motion to do that, or to put it at the front so people can say what they got to say and then go home?
Well, the issue with that is if someone wants to speak on an agenda item, they have to wait till the end of the meeting. And that seems to be a point of controversy.
No, they can speak throughout the meeting
Right.
on things that are
if it-
brought up.
If it's the
Yeah.
30th agenda item that they want to speak to, then they have to wait till the 30th agenda item instead of speaking during the beginning.
As
why
I
couldn't-
understand, the end comment part is for anything that wasn't on the agenda that they'd like to see in the future.
Right.
Is that what you're asking, Ms. Parsons, to move that part up first?
Yeah, I think that things that aren't on the agenda people should be able to come in and say whatever's on their mind and then leave.
I'm not opposed to that, but we would have to reorder and
We'd have
vote
to
on that
redo
as
that
a,
policy, would we not?
what's that?
We would have to redo that entire policy, so
We'd have to rework your
Right.
policy and include some of the
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'd have to maybe make an amendment to it or something
So in
like
the
that.
future, well, we have to put that on the agenda for one of the board meetings and then first and second reading.
Well, we can
I
make a
think,
motion to amend
Since this is the first
this
reading,
as
can
a
we
first
do that?
reading, right?
yeah, but you'd have to decide on what revisions you want to come back for this. It'd be a first reading again because you're asking for quite a drastic change. So I would say, Mr. President, my suggestion is I'm okay and then with some of the changes you guys want to make, barring the consent agenda things, of course, that you, sir, have the power to pull that and say we would table that and bring it back as a first reading with revisions. And
So I'm going to speak to a couple of things
Okay.
that were brought up on the consent agenda. So as far as board members being the only ones that can pull items from the or ask that the items be pulled from the consent agenda, I believe, truly we are representatives of the people. But I'm not saying that the people shouldn't have the right to, once they've looked at the consent agenda, then ask that something be pulled from it in a public meeting. I would agree that we could possibly have a vote by the board on items that are being requested to be removed. So that once the public has, or a board member or a staff member or a student has asked for an item to be removed from the consent agenda, then it would be agreed to by a vote, a majority vote of the board.
Mr. President, may I clarify? Yes, they can contact you before the meeting and ask that you pull that. Absolutely.
I understand that, but sometimes the timing doesn't work for people, you know, like, Trustee Whistler was saying, people are busy, they may not get to an item until the last minute, you know, and so if they show up at a meeting, if they've taken the time to do that and they want to request, then the board can vote, you know, if we agree to that.
They do have, since the board gets posted, they have the same amount of time to look at the agenda. So they have that amount of time to contact a board member and say, I have concerns. And if you agree that you have concerns and you want to pull it, that would be up to whomever they contacted. But they do have all of those days to get a hold of you.
I understand that.
Sorry, Mr. President. I was gonna ask, are they allowed like right before the meeting if they see you? Can they ask you? Okay, I just want to make sure so that way.
But a lot of people don't understand the way things work and they get here and they just want to, they might hear something and they might ask about something. And so it's like, you know, those rules, but most people with their 3 kids or four or 5 kids out playing soccer do not know our rules. So it has to be something that works for the public.
So can we, Mr. President, can we push it to the next meeting to make change?
Well, I'm looking at this, because we're talking about concerns about the meeting being hijacked or this agenda item being hijacked. But if the board has control.
The board always
by
has
a vote,
control. Mhm.
Then if something's regardless of who requests it, we still have control of the meeting by our vote.
Yes, it's the board's business meeting that the public attends. The board has control of the meeting.
So I see no problem with allowing them to request.
Before the meeting.
Or during the agenda item. Either way, I mean, what's the concern of someone, you know, short on time that wants to come up and request something?
The great thing about the consent agenda is at the very beginning. So if they come in, they want to talk to you, you have the same concerns as they have, you can pull it as a board member.
It used to read that any board member or citizen can pull something from, it just was a couple of years ago, it got changed.
Yeah.
So.
I'm pretty sure we'd have all of our board
Yeah.
policies archived. We could look back in there and
We
verify.
can.
We
Never
do that.
can.
And I remember that was the policy.
Uh-huh.
When I was
It
coming to
was.
board meetings prior to being elected.
Yep.
The other issue with Trustee Farr stated was the HIPAA, and you talked about early graduation. None of those things are currently listed in here.
But in your
so
wording,
now-
sir, it says it could be included. It says consent agenda items will include, but are not limited to, and including those things. So based on the way you're wording
Well,
it,
where does it say
those
that?
could be on the consent agenda in the future and be allowed to be pulled out of the consent agenda and openly discussed.
So the red is what I proposed, right? A board
Correct.
member, staff member, student, or citizen may request any item to be removed from the consent agenda with the exception of personnel reports for any reason. Now that pretty much mirrors what was in there in yellow before, but it just added staff member, student, and citizen.
And by doing that, you create a conflict with the information that can be contained in the consent agenda. By
Maybe-
adding that verbiage, you
We-
create the conflict as I understand it. And I would refer to our attorney, but that now includes that because you're adding that verbiage that
Instead of using,
By me adding staff member and student and citizen,
yes,
just put, anything can be removed from the consent agenda except for confidential information. That's something like to that.
the reason why I bring that up, Mr. President, is because what you're asking when you remove something from the consent agenda is to table it until after we've approved everything else, and then we discuss and then vote on those items separately, which means that could very well be discussing confidential or sensitive information about a student, a parent, their health information, their academic record, what have you. And that by you adding that verbiage into the who can ask for it, you open that up for, it's a can of worms,
Well,
basically.
we can put those in as an exception then. The HIPAA and early graduation, I agree with that. Let's put both of those in there as exceptions.
Well, I think you're going to have to use the word confidential information because you don't know what's going to be on the consent agenda.
Can I make a suggestion? Why am I echoing?
I don't.
I would just suggest that if you're inclined to add any kind of limiting language, that you include confidential information
Okay.
and any information that's protected by any city, state, local, federal laws, like something really broad. Including but not limited to HIPAA and FERPA and some of the things that you've discussed here.
That's why I think this needs to be tabled and brought back as a first read. So there's a lot of revisions we're asking for.
Oh, definitely. We're going to bring this back as a first reading, but I want to I want it to be the first reading last time.
Your mic was off.
Okay, so I'm going to amend this with the exception of personnel reports, confidential information, right? Any federal or state,
And any information protected by federal, state, or local laws is confidential, including but not limited to FERPA and HIPAA.
But I just need a point of order, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I don't think we can move forward as an action item on this until those revisions are put in place because the public has not had a chance to review those in writing on a future agenda item.
okay, I'll make a revision. We'll bring this back as a first reading at the next meeting.
I was going to make a motion if you're up for a motion.
Which, yes,
Okay.
Trustee Peterson.
I move that regarding policy BDD, we keep all of the additions regarding public comment and include an amendment to allow the public to speak on items not listed on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting as well. And then I also, with my motion, move to strike anything regarding having members of the public remove things from the consent agenda.
Second.
So,
Maybe better repeat that, Bridget. I don't think
yeah,
I got
repeat
it.
that.
Sure.
So,
So I move that this policy BDD, all the language regarding the open meeting, the public comment, stay the same with the inclusion of what you would like, Ms. Parsons, stating that the public may speak on items not listed on the agenda at the beginning of the meetings, along with they're talking about items listed on the agenda. So that is there. And then I also move in my motion to strike any changes regarding the public being able to move items from the consent agenda.
so,
So Ms. Peterson, just so I understand, you're basically stating that we would go back to the original wording in that portion about the consent agenda?
Yes, board members will be removing the consent
Okay.
agenda.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think it's too convoluted at this point. I think it just needs to be,
Well, we do have a motion and a second, so we do have to take a vote.
okay? All in favor of,
Hold, you need to ask for discussion.
Yeah, along with that, with what Ms. Peterson said, I'd like to add that, public can talk. If they choose not to talk at the beginning on agenda items and they want to wait until the agenda is presented, I think we should add that in there for discussion later to give them that chance.
Can you explain that? I think we already are including that, but can you explain
we?
it again?
Okay,
So I can
just-
make sure I understand.
Okay, so if we talked about them being able to talk at the beginning, for things that may not be on the agenda. So those who have something to say don't have to be here for hours.
Correct,
And then they also have the time at the beginning to speak on something on the agenda.
correct.
But I also want to allow the public to wait until the agenda is presented by us.
Yes,
To be able to speak, because they may have questions that arise during that. So we need to
Yes.
have all three of them.
yep, I'm fine with all three,
Okay.
and I just included the addition of,
so,
Yes. Thank you for question.
and we have a second on that, and then we'll have further discussion.
I don't know if there was any.
Well, gonna ask for further discussion on the motion.
Okay, I'll second James' motion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He
Sorry.
was just asking a
Okay.
clarification point, so the
First
motion
and
still
second,
stands in a
and we're
second.
gonna either have to vote no or yes.
Can I ask a question for James? So instead of saying or, they should be able to do and or be? You know what I'm saying? Because,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
So I can amend my motion to include the language and or. If that's,
So we're.
okay. So,
So
so Mr. Bull, you will just amend your second.
who seconded that?
No.
Just
Okay.
so I understand for my clarification, we're asking for these amendments and revisions, and we're gonna be bringing it back as a first reading or a second reading?
It will come back as a second reading. And the and or part, we can go for a third reading. It can keep going.
It's not that, I would rather see this changes made and in writing and see it for the first time as a first reading before I make my decision.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would too.
And I think the and or part removes they have to choose one.
yes.
Yeah.
That's,
So they will not be choosing, so that whole sentence should be stricken if that's the case. And I'm fine with that. So I will amend my motion to include the strikeout of that. They have to choose A or B. Okay. And Mr. Bull, you need to amend your second if you
Mr.
agree.
Logan, could I ask our attorney a question? Do we have to make a motion and action on this, or can the president just say we're going to table this until the following meeting and then bring it back again as a first reading?
So right now, trustee Peterson is correct. There's a motion on the floor with a second. A couple of amendments that haven't been seconded, but so there does need to be a vote.
Okay.
And so it's up to you whether you want that motion to pass. And if you don't, somebody after that can bring another motion. It's up to you.
So if I may speak, Mr. President, Mr. Bull needs to decide if he wants to amend his second to include the strikeout of the A or B. Or who did it?
Mr. Farr.
Mr. Farr? Oh, whoever did the second.
I'm not clear.
Yes, I do.
So did we get a second on any of this?
Mr. Farr.
Mr. Farr did second.
Mr. Farr did second, okay, so. Well, we'll take a vote on this. All in favor of trustee Peterson, did you have a question? No. Motion to strike any changes to the consent agenda and to allow public comment on, was it non-agenda items
Agenda at the beginning
at the beginning
and agenda items.
and agenda items at the beginning
And during the agenda.
and during the agenda? Is that what you're?
Mr. Hendricks, if it's easier, you can just say, take a vote. Mrs. Peterson made a motion, Mr. Farr made a second. And
No, I'm
if
just
it's,
I'm trying to understand what the motion is.
I can repeat it.
Okay.
My motion was for policy BDD to, when it comes to the public comment section, to allow the addition of public comment on non-agenda items, also at the beginning with agenda items for the public. Also, a strike through of the line that states they have to choose one or the other. So this continues to allow them to speak on agenda items. Then the second part of that is the strike through any of the public removing items from the consent agenda.
That is what I second.
I just, my discussion again on this motion is that I would prefer that it be written so that it's clearly understandable for myself and the public
But we
to
still have to
read.
take a vote on it, you know?
Right. So, but let's take a vote on this motion. All those in favor of trustee Peterson's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
I'm opposed.
Is it, because it doesn't have that on the consent agenda that they can pull something from the consent agenda, does it?
We're gonna bring it back.
Well, that, the motion strikes that.
No, that we want that? Does it have that?
No, it strikes that.
Strikes that?
Yeah.
I vote nay. Because I think those, that they've come in and they wanted to pull something from the consent agenda.
Okay, so this will allow, okay, so, did you have something to say, Mr. McIntyre? Come to
We're
the,
just wondering what the vote is. Does it pass or fail?
The public is just wondering what the vote outcome was because
Okay.
you already had discussion and now you
Okay.
had a vote, but now we're having discussion again. I'm just trying to understand what the vote was.
so
We'll figure
the
it
vote
out,
on
Mr.
Bridget
McIntyre.
Peterson's motion was 5-2. And the ayes have it. The nays were myself and trustee Parsons. Let me write this down.
Went down.
Moving on to agenda item 21 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GC, appointment of classified personnel as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan.
Good evening, President Hendricks, member of the board. After each Nevada legislative session, POPAC provides school districts with recommended policy updates based on the new laws. Updating LCSD policies helps maintain good standing with the insurance pool and reduces risk. While POPAC allows districts to tailor recommendations to their need, adaptations must align with the NRS and federal employment laws, so final policy language may differ. Board memo for GC, appointment of non-licensed personnel as a first reading. There were several updates to this policy that ensured clarity and alignment with current practices. The term classified has been replaced with non-licensed throughout the policy to reflect more accurate terminology and to capture those non-licensed employees who are not considered classified. The reference to condition of employment has been removed and replaced with more descriptive and accurate language listed under 3, 4, and 5 in the policy. And third, in collaboration with the classified union president, transportation supervisor, we designated safety sensitive positions within the non-licensed personnel category. The designation of safety sensitive positions is required under LCSD board policy GBBE, drug and alcohol free workplace. These revisions enhance the policy's precision and address important considerations for both compliance and workforce safety.
Mr. President,
Trustee Farr,
make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve revisions to LCSD Board Policy GC, appointment of non-licensed personnel as a first reading.
I'll second that motion.
Trustee Farr has made a motion to accept the presentation of policy GC, and it was seconded by Trustee Bowl. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Just got something
Microphone, please.
to say about all these policies, which I added them up and there's 47. And you might not think that you need to give the background information on all this stuff, but we've got new board members. You should always give the information on them. And something else I did today is I went and I looked at Washoe County and see how many agenda items they had. You know how many they had? 17, and they're 8 times our size. So I think we
This is
need
not on the
to
agenda
start
item.
reconsidering bringing these forward, and especially with no information.
Just a reminder to keep the discussion on the topic, which is the acceptance or of the first reading.
On this excessive, it is a talk on this excessive policies.
Thank you, trustee Parsons. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 22 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCA, casual/temporary seasonal employment as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan.
Mr. President, do you want me to continue my, each time talking about PULPAC, providing updates?
No, I think we're.
Can I go ahead and get into the memo
Go ahead.
background
Yeah.
information?
Go ahead.
Okay, this policy GB, employment and compensation, and board policy GC, it references GB, employment and compensation, and it references board policy GC, appointment of non-licensed personnel to clarify procedural steps the district will follow. It also has a previous reference to 120 consecutive working days that's been updated to 6 months when assigning work to casual, temporary, or seasoned workers. This change is to comply with the language from the Nevada Public Employment Retirement System. The revision aims to ensure consistency with related policies and provides clear guidelines for the workforce management. Do you have any questions?
Trustee Carson?
I just have one.
Yeah.
Is this regarding long-term subs too, or is that a totally different group?
That's a different group.
That's all I needed.
Trustee Peterson?
Yeah, I move that the Board of Trustees approve revisions to LCSD Board Policy GCA, casual/temporary/seasonal employment as a first reading.
Second.
I have a motion by trustee Peterson. I have a second by trustee Farr. Is there any discussion on the motion? I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 7-0.
Mr. President, could I offer a piece of advice? Just to you on the abstention votes. You can ask if up front if anybody abstains and then not just go to the yes and no, we can move forward. Ms. Peterson, would you like to explain?
Usually it's rare that anyone abstains. It's like out of the ordinary. So if someone's going to abstain, they have to present why they're abstaining before the vote, and then you'll know that they're going to abstain, so you don't need to ask any abstentions when you're taking the vote.
I did discuss that procedure with a parliamentarian, and that was their recommendation, so.
You're the president.
Okay, now which policy was that?
22.
What was that? GCA. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna abstain from 21. I might have to go down here and look at these and start abstaining.
Just Parsons, we already voted.
Well, I'm gonna abstain.
From,
Sorry.
legal counsel, once she's already voted and moved on, can she go back and change her vote?
No, if you've already voted, that's your vote.
I think you'll be all right, just from moving forward, abstain if you feel.
Okay.
That was just our first reading, Ms. Parsons.
Mr. President, if I may, could I please ask legal counsel to restate the instances when people should abstain and when they shouldn't?
If you are going to abstain from voting, then you have to explain your reasons for abstaining, and the ethical rules state that you have a duty to vote for your constituency. And if you're abstaining, if you have a pecuniary interest or a family member has a pecuniary interest in the outcome of the vote, which is a financial interest. And so if that is not a conflict of interest for you on the agenda item, there's not likely a reason to
It is
abstain.
like a first degree.
It's regarding money. A pecuniary is a financial conflict. If there's no financial conflict with the agenda item, you shouldn't be abstaining.
So just clarification, Mr. Attorney. So if you didn't do your homework and fully read this and fully understand it, that's not a reason to abstain.
Correct.
Thank you.
Point of clarification. So if you have a family member that's going to benefit from this, but does not benefit any greater than any other person in the district in the same category, would that be a reason to abstain?
If you have a family member that is going to obtain a financial benefit from your vote, either way, then yes, you could abstain.
Even if it's a teacher and all of the teachers in the district are going to have the same benefit, just because one of your relatives is a teacher, then you need to abstain?
If it's a general, if it's a policy that's affecting all teachers evenly, if there's not, it's usually when somebody is a family member is a contractor and they're bringing it up for, approval of a bid, and it's their family member who's the contractor, and you guys are deciding whether to approve that contract. That's the prime example of when you might have a conflict.
But not when you have a family member that's a teacher and all teachers across the district get the same benefit from the vote.
That's not my understanding.
So that would not be a reason to abstain at that point.
Correct.
Okay.
I asked the same questions I'm sure Mr. Whistler's concerned about now when I came on.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, because my wife and mother-in-law, but if it's teachers collectively, I can still vote. But if my mother-in-law or my wife was gonna gain financially on their own, I would have to abstain.
Yes.
So just so everyone's clear, that's how that would work.
Yeah.
Legal. Mr. President, may I ask
Sorry.
legal counsel one more clarifying question? May I ask her one?
Go ahead,
But
trustee.
on
Okay,
20
and as far as that goes, you don't need to abstain when it's a group negotiation, but just for proper etiquette, you should say, just FYI, my wife, my mother-in-law do work for the district, but I'm not abstaining.
Correct, yes, that's what I was gonna say, a prefatory comment before the vote so that the public knows your position on the.
Mr. President,
Trustee Farr.
I have a question that's not regarding this, but just a comment to make. It's a pretty busy week at the end of the semester. I don't see anywhere in the rest of our agenda where we have actionable policy items that are just being updated for PULPAC that we require all the school personnel who have an early day tomorrow and a quick week. If we don't, can we let them go home, or do we need them to be here other than strict district personnel?
I think Ms. Hogan, who's doing the presenting, it needs to stay. And I think the rest of them.
You're not gonna let me leave?
No, I'd like you to stay, please. But the rest of you, if you'd like to, I don't see that you're on the agenda for any presentation. So if you'd like to go home, be my guest.
Mr. President, I have a comment. That's typically, Mr. Logan asks them to stay. So
Okay,
that would
sorry.
be a Mr. Logan call.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
overstepped my boundaries.
I'm gonna even say that that's Ms. Huckabee who oversees them. That's gonna have that same. So they could be upset at her. The reality is the reason why they're here largely is you see them once every quarter. We just want to make sure that you're at least getting to know them, making sure that you see their faces, but I will let Ms. Huckabee send a text out and excuse them if she'd like.
Could we call the ambulance for Miss Huckabee? She just got hit by a bus.
You're in no, Harmon. You guys are welcome to leave.
Thank you. Sorry to interject there, but
So moving on to
Something I never seen before.
agenda item number
I
23.
don't know if I like it or not. Okay, I'm gonna, on this one, I think when it's a transfer assignments and reassignment for promotions, I think you should probably abstain if you're in the first degree with a person, don't you?
Ms. Parsons, could you please
Yeah.
wait till you're assigned the floor by the president, like the rest of us are trying to wait? I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Peterson.
So Agenda item number 23 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCAA transfer slash reassignment slash promotions as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan. Any discussion by the,
Thank you. Yes, GCAA is for non-licensed personnel, and as a first reading, the revisions to the policy provide clarification on the types of directed transfers, reassignments, and introduces new language regarding rehired employees. The policy also references Board Policy GC, appointment of non-licensed personnel, to address situations where reassignment involves transitioning an employee from a role without direct student contact to a position with direct student interaction. All procedures outlined in the policy will be carried out in compliance with the applicable collective bargaining agreement. Do you have questions?
Trustee Bowl?
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve revisions to LCSD Board Policy GCAA transfers, reassignments, promotions of non-licensed personnel as a first reading.
Second.
I second.
Sorry. I'll let you have the next three.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Trustee Bowl. I have a second.
He got first.
Who got it?
He got it first.
By Trustee Farr. Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, I'm calling for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I think I probably better abstain.
Okay. So I have a 6-0 vote with one abstention. Okay. Agenda item 24. Possible action, discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCAB, resignation as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan.
Thank you. Policy GCAB on resignation is for all employees, ensuring consistent guidelines across the district. Key clarifications and adjustment include the numbered titles of the sections. If you notice, it went to titles. Withdrawing a resignation, it clarifies that resignations are irrevocable and binding, but it does allow for employees wishing to rescind a resignation the opportunity to do so under certain circumstances. Job abandonment, this section now contains language that allows the employee to provide an explanation of instances where they might have been absent from work without authorization. It also references the CBA's collective bargaining agreements. And by applying these updates universally, the policy fosters transparency and equity while helping employees better understand their responsibilities and options regarding resignation.
Any discussion? I have one question.
Yeah.
So under item number 2, return of district property, we've removed credit cards and clothing as things that they shall return. Understand the clothing, but why aren't we asking them to return credit cards?
They should not have a credit card. We don't, none of our employees
That makes sense. Nobody has a
has
credit card?
school credit card except for like your cabinet members may for like traveling. I know like the principal may for travel, sporting, but not any other staff.
Does this policy cover them as far as resignation?
I would say that the one line, an employee must return all district property. That really does take care of that. We just say including district ID. I mean, if you want credit card in there, that's fine, but the first sentence does First part does include it. Must return all district property. I would say that includes credit cards.
Yeah, good point.
Again, if you want it there, it's an easy pull.
Nah, it's all covers all, right? Okay.
I was also going to say the P cards get canceled anyways if they're to a name of an employee. So that card's going to become null and void anyway. Not that we wouldn't want it to destroy it, but it's not going to work anyway. But
any further discussion? I'll accept a motion.
Mr. President, I motion that we approve agenda 24 as a first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Whistler, or Trustee Whistler. A second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Trustee Whistler. I have a second by Trustee Peterson. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item number 25 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCB, introductory period for non-licensed employees as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Jo Hogan. Ms. Hogan.
Thank you. Revisions to policy GCB has the introductory period for non-licensed personnel reduced from 12 months to 9 months. This aligns with their collective bargaining agreement of the classified. The timeline extending the introductory period, if needed, is reduced from 12 to 6 months as well. The policy also references board policy GCBA performance evaluations for non-licensed personnel, emphasize the importance of ongoing performance evaluations throughout the introductory period. These evaluations will serve as a basis for determining continued employment. And it ensures consistency with negotiated agreement and underscores the district commitment to thoroughly perform performance assessments through the onboarding process.
Any comments or discussion by the board?
All right, just curious because I have a note here and I wrote down the wrong agenda. And I was dealing with their exit, I guess you call it an exit report.
Exit interview?
Yes, exit interview. Is that on this one or is that a different agenda? I'm sorry, I wrote it down wrong in my notes.
I can look back. I don't believe so, but no, this is all introductory period.
All right, we'll move on.
Okay, so
Mr. President,
Trustee Farr,
make a motion that we accept LCSD policy GCB introductory period for non-licensed employees as a first reading.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Trustee Farr to accept policy GCB, and I have a second from Trustee Peterson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'm call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to agenda item 26 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCBA performance evaluations for non-licensed personnel as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Jo Hogan.
Thank you. Revision to policy GCBA on performance evaluation for non-licensed personnel. Replace all existing language to provide clear guidance on the purpose of evaluations. The key updates include: 1, expanded scope. It now applies to all personnel except teachers and site administrators.
to the timeline of evaluations. The clear timelines are established for evaluating both probationary and post-probationary non-licensed employees. 3, employee participation. Employees are encouraged to actively participate in the performance evaluations, promoting engagement and collaboration. 4, administrative regulations have been added to address timelines for managing deteriorating or inadequate performance, ensuring prompt and effective action when necessary. These revisions enhance clarity, support professional growth, and align with the evaluation practices with district goals.
Any questions or discussion by the board? Trustee Peterson?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve revisions to LCSD Board Policy GCBA performance evaluations for non-licensed personnel as a first reading.
I second that.
So I have a motion from trustee Peterson and a second from trustee Carson. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item 27 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCC, work time as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Jo Hogan.
Thank you. Revisions to policy GCC work time clarifies key expectations that align with established agreements, the collective bargaining agreements. The policy now explicitly references each collective bargaining agreement, which governs the process and procedures for all employee groups. It also clarifies meal and rest periods. It's been added, language has to specify that meal periods cannot be taken in conjunctions with rest periods, insurance compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act and work time guidelines. The updates promote consistency across employee groups and provide clear guidance on work time expectations.
Any questions or discussion by the board?
Mr. President.
Trustee Farr?
Sir, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the new LCSD policy GCC work time as a first reading.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by trustee Farr. I have a second by trustee Bull. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item 28 for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCCA, time reporting as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Jo Hogan.
Thank you. Revisions to policy GCCA time reporting includes several updates to enhance clarity and alignment with the applicable Fair Labor Standards Act. They reference the CBAs using additional language that collective bargaining agreements may specify time reporting processes and procedures that supersede this policy or that are not explicitly covered in this policy. The number 2, compensation for non-exempt employees. The policy now clarifies compensation guidelines for non-exempt employees, ensuring accuracy for hours worked. And 3, the FLSA safe harbor, a new paragraph has been added to better explain the Fair Labor Standards Act provisions, providing a clear guidance on compliance and protections. These reinforce transparency and time reporting and compensation practices while aligning both with the CBAs and FLSA requirements.
Mr. President.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So under item number 3 here, position designations, exempt or non-exempt. The yellow section where we're crossing out, the second sentence says, if an employee feels he, she is improperly classified, he, she should request a review of the classification from human resources. An investigation will be conducted on a timely basis, and the district will act to correct any errors as soon as possible. So why are we removing an employee's ability to request?
Which one are you on?
This is 3, it's the bottom of the second page. Red number 3, and then I'm looking at the yellow part there. And
Page
Oh,
276,
okay,
Ms.
okay.
Hogan.
So I see it.
And so the first sentence I didn't have an issue, but that second one we're removing the ability of an employee to request a review. So we're not, it's just a request. And an investigation will determine if there are any errors. I'm just wondering what changed in NRS that brought about a need to remove an employee's ability to request a review.
I think what we are looking at there too is they're saying that it's the responsibility of the employee. A lot of times we catch it and let the employee know that they should have been paid differently, like time and a half or anything like that. And we want the ability to do that.
But if you don't, and the employee catches something and wants, or it just has a question and wants to request a review, seems like we're removing that option for them. I'm wondering where, what changed, in NRS, because I mean,
Ms. Hogan?
it says these are recommended changes based on recent laws that were passed. So what recent law
And
passed?
if they align to your school district, and with that, it says also that districts tailor recommendations to their needs, adaptations, and must align with the NRS and federal employment laws. So they have to align to what we have as well already in there. But that's a tough one for me to answer right here. Yeah, I'd have to look into it more.
Mr. President, may I ask the related question?
Go ahead, Trustee.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's just because it's not ever having to be done, because on a job description, it will classify if you're exempt or not exempt. So everyone should know from day one whether or not they're an exempt employee. So I'm just wondering if this is just being removed because it's unnecessary and no one's had to do it before.
Redundancy, possibly.
Mr. Logan, do you have any insight?
Are you asking about the second sentence or the third? For the cost accounting and billing purposes, or are you talking about if an employee feels improperly classified?
So this would be on the second page down at the bottom.
I'm on number 3. I'm good with where you're at. I just don't.
Okay,
He's
so it's
asking about the classification, if they feel they're so classified wrong.
so
Classification should be coming, there's specific laws that say whether you're exempt or not coming in, and that is clearly outlined on a job description prior to even employment.
Yeah, we covered that in GC.
I was looking down
appointment
here.
classification.
So here, okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I could jump in a little bit. So in terms of classification of whether an employee is an exempt or non-exempt employee, the employee doesn't get to make that determination. It's made under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And there's very specific criteria for someone to meet in the job duties in order for that to be considered an exempt position, which is a salaried position. So positions are non-exempt unless they meet specific criteria in which they can be deemed exempt salaried. Otherwise, you must pay them as an employer, as a non-exempt employee. So we can't have just the employee. Now, an employee can ask, why am I exempt or why am I not exempt? But those are all categories that fall under the Fair Labor Standards Act, and we must abide by those. If that clarifies.
It seems clear to me, but I'm just concerned that, I mean, you obviously have a very clear understanding of this. But I'm thinking some employees may not, and removing their ability to simply request a review, and this is all done under the guise that these policy changes are because of recent laws that have passed. So what recent law passed that would require us to change and remove an employee's ability to ask for a review, which, then goes to an investigation. And if
Yeah.
if there's no grounds for it, then certainly,
Mr. President.
it's the request, or their status stays the same. So,
Mr. President, if I could just clarify for you, not every policy that we change is due to a new law. Sometimes Pool Pact audits our policies and looks at, are we compliant with existing laws? And if they catch something, they advise us to revise the policy. And I believe what Ms. Huckabee was explaining was that the language that you just pointed out was not in compliant with the Fair Labor Standards Act, is that they don't have a choice in that matter. It's determined ahead of time whether they're exempt or non-exempt.
Yeah, this is just saying for the cost accounting and billing purposes, and we have to have it as an exempt or non-exempt status. And if what you're saying is, can someone ask about their classification? Absolutely. They can ask about their classification anytime. So if we feel like, I don't have any issue with saying that an employee can request a review of their FLSA status.
I'd like to keep that in there, just,
I don't think there's anything.
And
issue with
definitely,
that.
what I'm looking at is the background material up here, and it says that these changes are based on recent laws that were passed. So why are we making changes, to things that?
Yeah, these changes are made due to the last legislative session and also based on Pool Pact's attorneys who look at this and say, what is going to keep the district out of liability, safety, and all of those kinds of concerns. And allowing an employee to request rationale on their FLSA status is fine. We don't have an issue with it.
So I'd like to make a motion that we leave those two sentences in. Starting at the word if an employee feels, and continuing through the next sentence as well. Just so that we give them the ability to request something.
And I apologize. I was looking down on number 5A when we were first talking to.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so hold on, let me.
Can we change it to, instead of she, he, kind of get into they?
Yeah.
Just to be consistent with our policies that we've been doing.
You have to amend your motion.
Say that again.
So right now it says if an employee feels she/he is improperly classified, can we go, if an employee feels they are improperly classified, the employee should request a review, just kind of make it more neutral.
Okay. All right.
It's just consistent with all the rest of our policies.
Gotcha. That sounds good. I'll amend my motion to reflect the statement made by Superintendent Logan.
I'll amend my second.
So I have a motion by Trustee Hendricks. I have a second by Trustee Peterson. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 7-0. Moving on to agenda number 29 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding LCSD policy GCCB overtime as a first reading. This item is presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Jo Hogan.
Thank you. Policy GCCB outlines procedures for both exempt and non-exempt employees. Striking FMLA language was done as these provisions already exist in Board Policy CB, Family and Medical Leave Act. The non-exempt employees, the first one, overtime compensation is clarified. The specific reference NRS 281 3B2 were removed as all of NRS 281-100 is referenced at the end of this policy. So we didn't feel the need to reference it again there. Collective bargaining agreement, CBAs, may specify additional time reporting processes. Overtime pay will be included in the same paycheck which it was earned unless it can't be determined in a timely manner. And compensation time is better clarified with specific parameters to ensure that non-exempt employees are being appropriately compensated for their time worked. Exempt employees, this reinforces compliance with FLSA and the NRS salary basis rules, prohibiting improper deductions and ensuring reimbursement if any occur. The leave policy GBCA govern absent management for exempt employees. The policy changes more accurately describe the difference between exempt employees covered under the LCEA, CBA, and those not covered in regard to the leave deduction amounts. The CBAs may include additional compensation processes or procedures that are not detailed in this policy.
I have a question. Any other trustee Parsons?
Yeah, I've just heard some things. Now, is this the one that's like you guys don't want them to take overtime, get in very much overtime? Is this what it's talking about? Because I was just wondering what we're going to do, like, secretaries that have to like make arrangements for teachers and that, and they have a lot of overtime. Is this the one? So they would put that on a timesheet and they would actually get paid for that if their hours go over a 40-hour work week, and they would get compensated time and a half. If anything, we're finding they are not being compensated possibly as they should, if they are getting overtime or. So you want them to be. Well, is a lot of it, some are calling comp time. I don't want to go into too much details, but some secretaries, like you say, will write down, oh, I worked, 4 hours, I stayed late. And they may have hit over that 40-hour work week, but then when they're going to talk to someone about using comp time, which we would rather they not, they just get paid for that overtime, that they see the money. And another thing that I see that's really unfair in the district is I look at Paul Sullivan at all these events, and we can't compensate him anyway that, because he's in Fernley, which we have, 3 sports of everything, and he goes to everything. And it's like, that just seems so unfair to me. Is he going to be able to be compensated anyway?
That's the nature of an exempt employee.
I think we need to be looking at getting other people there so somebody doesn't work that hard.
And that would be something to look at if you're talking about adding personnel, but they all come with budget items. But he is an exempt employee. It's just like any of us here. It's that whether you work an hour, whether you work 12 hours, the job's still until the job's done kind of thing. And he does. They all work very hard. 100% correct.
Not like him.
He's at a lot of events. I'll give him that.
Trustee Whistler?
So I'm just curious, those that do hourly, because I know we have some that are salary and whatnot. How do they log that? I'm just curious how it works, how they log their time, overtime. Is there like
it's a timesheet at the school.
Okay, is it an online thing?
No, not right
Okay.
now. It's a timesheet that the secretary has.
Okay. I was just curious because I know I have one for work, and then if I do overtime, I got to add it and all that. So, okay, thank you.
So I have a question. I printed out that NRS 281.100. Looks like it was last updated 4 years ago. So you'd help me out here on item 1A. The first bullet point says, it looks to me like for employees who work schedule more than 8, but not more than 10 hours in a day will receive overtime compensation for the hours worked in excess of 40 hours in a work week. So that would be the new reading. So does this mean that we're removing, if someone is on an 8-hour shift and they work 10 hours, they're not going to get paid for that overtime, those 2 hours, unless that exceeds 40 hours. So I'm like at the end of the week, someone says, well, you worked 10 hours on Monday, but we're going to kick you out of here 2 hours early today. Then they're not going to get paid for that overtime they put in
40
on Monday.
hours. They go 40 hours. It's a work week of 40 hours. If they work more than 10 that one day, then anything above that is.
So I think what that's saying is, because it's very similar to where I work, is if I work 10 hours a day, I'll mark 10 hours, but I can't work more than 10 hours in that day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I work 10, 8, 8, 10, whatnot. Friday, I'll be putting in my overtime. You have to kind of configure, it's a real pain in the butt, and I feel sorry for the secretaries, but they have to configure all those hours. So you don't officially start racking up overtime until the 5th day of your work week, because by Nevada law, it has to be 40 hours per week. So if I work 40 hours my first 4 days, and then I work another 10, that's 10 hours of overtime. And that'll be added on Fridays.
It's the Fair Labor Standards Act. It's right here. It says covered non-exempt employees receive overtime pay for hours worked over 40 per work week.
I did read that.
Yeah.
This seems to be more favorable to the employee. So if they work overtime one day, a couple hours or whatever, they automatically get paid for the overtime.
So just know that it has to be prior approved for us. Part of their agreement is the employee has to ask permission prior. They can't just say, I'm going to work an extra 3 hours tonight and stay there. So unless it's prior approved by the supervisor.
I'm just, I guess I'm pro-labor, and I want to make sure that all of our hourly employees are protected, and that if they're working overtime, they're getting paid for it. Even if it's just that one day, so that they may feel like they're going to get a little extra on their paycheck until Friday when they're told to go home early. So, okay. Any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Looking for my trustee Farr.
make a motion that we accept LCSD policy GCCB overtime as first reading.
I second.
So I have a motion by trustee Farr. I have a second by trustee Whistler. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Number 30, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding new LCS policy GCCC, pay periods and paydays as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan.
Thank you. So while we're talking about all this time reporting and overtime, we wanted a board policy that can clearly state our pay periods and paydays, and they are the 20th of each month. And we just wanted in language that if it falls on a Saturday, Sunday holiday, they will be paid the preceding workday and not after.
Trustee Carson. Oh, sorry.
It don't matter. Go ahead.
You're good.
I just was wondering, I'm a teacher, so I'm going to ask this question. Why are they only getting paid once a month, not bi-weekly? What is like the reason?
I can't answer that.
It's been established.
It has been established a very long time. If you want to really hurt Mr. Rodriguez and his whole entire team. You'll do payday twice a month.
Sorry.
So Kyle Rodriguez, Fiscal Services Officer for the record. So currently, we have 2 people in our payroll department. It would not be possible to run more than 1 payroll a month. If we want to extend that and get a team of 6, we could definitely look into that. But we do not have the word manpower to do that. Unfortunately, it is a common question. That is just.
I would bring up also, Trustee Carson, before your time on the board, I believe it was about a year ago, we approved the FTE for another payroll technician, just so we could maintain what we currently have. Yeah.
Trustee Whistler?
Are you salary or hourly yourself?
I'm exempt, so I'm salary.
Okay, so overtime's cool, right? I mean.
That is why I'm here.
I'm just kidding. Thank you, because that was the same question I had. I was just curious why we were only paying them once a month, or, so that makes sense.
Thank you.
So, any further discussion by the board? I'll accept a motion at this time.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve new LCSD Board Policy GCCC pay periods and pay days as a first reading.
Second.
I have a motion by Trustee Bowl. I have a second by Trustee Farr. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to policy 31. For possible action, discussion and possible action regarding deletion of LCSD policy GDE, Retirement Incentive Plan, as a first reading. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan.
By removing policy GDE, we're emphasizing our dedication to fostering a supportive environment that encourages our staff to stay and thrive in these times where we were at. We need teachers, everything we can do to find teachers, recruit teachers. We don't see a teacher would stay as long as possible, and recruits aren't going to sign the lion to stay 27 years just in case we might offer an early retirement incentive. It was introduced. We've hired more seasoned teachers at one time with a lot of experience prior to COVID, and then we may have been at a different time back then.
Trustee Whistler.
So I looked over this. The military did something very similar while I was in, and I probably would have retired at 15 years if I wouldn't have been in debt, as most of the military is. So what I'm getting out of this is it looks like it's been around for quite a while and nobody's used it. And I think a big reason nobody used it, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, is the economy tanked in a sense. And a lot of teachers just couldn't afford to retire. And so we say we support our teachers, and I believe we do, but I would like to keep this on there because there may come a time where we actually may get an influx of teachers. Right now, teachers are not a high commodity because of the past few years. You know, things have been going crazy throughout every school in all the country. And so a lot of teachers are just jumping ship. I mean, my best friend's a teacher in Jersey, and he's already done because of what he can and cannot do. And he's just tired of it. And it's his first year. And I'm trying to get him out here. Yes, Mr. Logan. But I think this is a program we should hold on to just because this could be a good incentive in the near future. You know, it would also save the district money in the future, possibly. I don't know like how much of the retirement they lose if they take the early. The military is completely different, so I don't know what they would lose or what they would gain, but it's something I'd like to see keep in there.
Very costly.
To keep
to offer this.
Okay, can you explain?
I would probably be better with Mr. Rodriguez, but by the time we're buying out, we're paying into PERS in addition to them. So we found that keeping them is what we wanted, is less costly because they're at the highest pay scale they're at. So we're paying them at the highest with all their credits. And then we are paying into all their PERS, which is higher. So
what is the typical retirement? How many years before a teacher could officially retire?
30.
30, okay. And where would early retirement be? Like is it 5 years, 10 years, or is it?
I think this goes along with what you're asking, and I think having this policy here is like optional, but unless a district rolls out an incentive program. This policy allows them to roll out an incentive program. I'm not sure if it's stating that exactly all the requirements are already set out for the incentive program. Is that how it's been used in the past? I'm curious.
When I did ask about this, I don't think anyone since I don't think they've ever used it since 2010, even in policy. From what I heard, it was previous to that when there was, they had a large amount of teachers. So we were offering those at the top end to go, and we would incentivize them to leave and bring in younger ones who are just coming out of college and the ones in the waiting line. We have so many out there, but it's just not that way right now.
Okay.
Trustee Farr, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I was just going to point out to Mr. Whistler's knowledge. You may not be aware of this, but every year, usually in the summer, we'll get approached by the district staff to come up and they'll ask for approval on critical need hirings, right? And we've done that. We've approved those over time. We currently, and I found this out from Ms. Hogan, we currently have 35 teachers who are critically needed. They've already retired and they're coming back to double dip, basically, because we have that many shortages in teaching.
Yeah.
And they're not kidding. The number of students coming out of the education field has dwindled to a number that is just, there's no way. Like, for example, the ones that are coming out just of UNR, right, is not enough to even fill Washoe County's necessary needs. And before the rest of us rural counties even start trying to get these people to come in. Yeah, it's that as a profession, you look at the trend, and 20 years ago, it was, you had 25%, and now it's down to, I think it was like 8% as a major in college.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Is there a way to, because I know this is a first reading, is there a way to speak with the teachers union, president and vice president and whatnot, and see what the teachers think of it? Because I mean, in the long run, this is a program that could maybe benefit one of them in the near future or the distant future and whatnot. So could we maybe get some stats on that from the teachers union to see how many teachers would say, yeah, get rid of it. Nobody's going to use it.
So for clarification, I send all these policies out the day after the board meeting. So tomorrow they'll get more policies to read through. I did get one email from the teachers union that they would like to see it stay. They think it would be a good for recruitment. And I mean, this is just something for you guys to discuss. I don't know, maybe you could bring it back later, even as an incentive, when times are different. But right now
Yeah, I personally, I think it's beneficial just to keep it. It's not costing us any money to keep this there. I know there's many jobs out there, like if I retired out of the Navy, I could go, if I became like a state trooper, they have an incentive where, hey, $7,000, you can buy 5 years and you can retire. Instead of doing 20 as a state trooper, I can retire at 15 years. A lot of jobs do have that. So some of these incentives are really nice. And just if it's a teacher union, I don't know if it was a union representative that emailed you. That's otherwise, I think it would be beneficial to go with what the teachers are asking, leave the incentive in there. It costs us nothing to leave the wording in the policies. And, that way because if in 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden they're like, hey, what happened to this program? Now we got to try and bring it back into play and do all of this. So I just suggest we just go ahead and keep it in there just since it's not going to hurt us.
I do have a couple comments too. I think it sounds like for number 2 on this, the plan is voluntary. The Lyon County Board of School Trustees will periodically review the plan and reserve the right to cancel the policy if determined not to be in the best interest of the district. This was canceled at one point and said, we can't financially afford it. One thing that was changed, so at one point, we only took 5 years of service. So you have a teacher come in here, we would take up to 5 years of service from any other district, and so they were low on the pay scale coming in. Now we take all years of service, and so you could have a teacher coming in at 25 years. If I was going to play your game, that's going to be allowed potentially. I'm coming from Washoe with 25 years left. I come here for 5 years, and you're going to buy me out, and you're going to buy me out at the highest. And the replacement is no longer a young teacher. So you're gonna spend all this money to buy this person out and replaced with another Washoe County 25-year teacher, and you're gonna pay them out, and you're not having any money savings because we accept all years of service, if that makes sense now. It was not the case. It really was out with the old, you'd replace it with a younger teacher. That was a cost savings, and it was all about cost savings. And now if you reinstate this, it's going to be high cost replaced with high cost, and you're buying 3 years of PERS out at the same time. Financially, it's not a great move. And again, we need teachers. If you want to leave it in here, it's not intact right now. I mean, we're not using it. But I would not recommend at this point going here or financially. It's going to take a big hit. You're going to have lots of teachers retire if you're going to incentivize them with 3 years earlier now. You'd have a ton of teachers retiring. We don't have anybody to replace it with. Sorry.
No, thank you, Mr. Logue.
Mr. President,
Yes, trustee Farr.
I'd like to entertain a motion that we delete LCSD policy GDE retirement incentive plan as a first read.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion from trustee Farr. I have a second from trustee Peterson. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
You said that the union wants to talk to you about, is it this one? I said that a union emailed me stating they would like to see it in as a recruiting tool.
I would also say that this is not a negotiated item here. We're talking about a board policy. If this was a CBA, we'd be negotiating something different. So to go to them and try to negotiate this it's not the forum.
And not negotiation, but maybe just rewording it or a different way of getting that incentive where it may not be as costly, but that's a little above me for now.
Trustee Carson.
I just need to know, can I be exempt from this? Because at first I'm a teacher and plus I'm in the union. So I don't want to get in the way of that. So I don't know if that would work for me.
For Lyon County School District?
No.
I will say as a point of order, though, Mr. Whistler and Ms. Carson, to remind you that you did take campaign contributions from the Lyon County Education Association, and it might be in your best interest to abstain from the vote.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
Or if she just states that.
Yeah, there's no requirement to abstain, but if you want to just make some disclosures regarding your position and then take the vote, that's fine.
Okay.
I will disclose that I did receive a check from the LCEA and whatnot.
Me too. I also received a check from the union.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor of deleting policy GDE, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
I would like to, there's no way we can push it forward till we hear what the union has to say.
The vote's already been taken.
They said it on.
So can we restate? Sorry, it looks like you're going right there. Just needed to restate it what the vote was.
Restate the motion?
The vote.
No, the vote.
Oh, yeah, I was going to restate. The vote was 5-2 in favor of the motion, 2 nays, and that was trustee Carson and trustee Whistler. Okay. myself, I'd like to take a 10-minute break just to stretch for a minute, and then we'll come back at
We just say that
10 o'clock.
we did these last month, didn't we? The ones that are coming up. And we just kind of like through them.
She must have pushed through to get done.
Yeah, let's just push them through if you have any.
I just like to stretch for a minute.
The president.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting back to order at 10 o'clock. So moving forward to agenda item 32 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding revisions to the following LCSD policies as a second and final reading. No changes were made to these policies after the first reading except for BBB elections. Any member of the board may request that a policy be removed and discussed and acted upon separately. This item is being presented by Executive Director of Human Resources, Billy Joe Hogan. Ms. Hogan.
Mr. President, seeing as there's been no revisions or changes except for the one that we had on BBB elections, I make a motion that we accept the following policies: BBB board elections, GC, use of aversive interventions and physical and mechanical restraints on students with disabilities, policy GBBY, work stoppage prohibited, policy GBBZ, personal appearance, policy GBCA, leaves, policy GBCB, Family and Medical Leave Act, policy GBCC, workers' compensation, policy GBCD, transitional duty, policy GBCE, benefits, policy GBCF-DG, work-related travel, policy GBCG, leave for parents of children enrolled in school, and policy GBCH, leave for nursing mothers, as a second reading.
I second that.
Who was second?
Mhm.
Who was second?
Carson.
Don.
Nice.
Okay. Please. So what you said, Trustee Farr?
I would not like to amend that at all.
So is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I have one on, so personal appearance, with the way things are today and the clothing, it sounds kind of bad, but like for example, what are the district's policies on like leggings? Because some of these leggings are extremely tight and you can see almost every crease in the legs on up. Do we have a policy? Because to me, certain clothing can be a little out there, and I want to make sure, our teachers are dressing like what are presentable, and I don't want distractions coming from a teacher,
This is GBBZ.
Yeah, GBBZ, sorry, personal appearance.
I would say that there's that comment in there. When the district believes an employee's dress or grooming does not comply with personal appearance guidelines, administrator, manager, supervisor will address the issue with the employee. If continued counseling fails to result in the desired position, the supervisor may initiate disciplinary action. With students, I will say what we normally do is it becomes an educational a distraction. That's typically when we start having the conversation. So don't really want to get into legging conversation.
Yeah,
I
no.
will tell you that it is a feisty one. And so typically if it's distracting, like it's too thin or it's revealing, or that's when the conversation needs to happen of why we're asking them to change.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
I know in, like Colorado County, we couldn't wear no open-toed shoes, no sandals, because there's health reasons. But I don't even see we don't do anything like that, so.
We do it for students.
Very liberal.
Trustee Peterson.
Yeah, mine is more of a, while we're on this, the policy BBB, I'm hoping legal counsel can make sure that I state this correctly, but I think there was some confusion about when somebody is appointed, if they're appointed, let's say somebody resigns and so they have 3 years left and they're appointed, that appointed person has to be in the election cycle, the next coming election cycle, but their original, and then 2 years later, they will go again into their election cycle because they never veer off their original election cycle. It's every 4 years. But if they're appointed maybe with 1 year left, then their original cycle will happen. But if they have extra time and does this make sense? What I'm trying to say. Okay, so how it works is if you're appointed and you have 3 years left, the next election cycle you will run, but that does not change your 4 year cycle. So you will always be on here on the same four-year cycle. However, you may have to go through a mid-cycle election if you're appointed. But
So-
your every 4 years is the same.
So, yeah, good. So NRS says that if you're appointed, then you have to run in the next general election.
Correct. If you.
Okay, and then once you're elected, you have a 4-year term.
No, this is where it gets confusing, because if that was the case, then you usually have 3 people running or 4 people running every election cycle. So you stay on that original election cycle. You will only have to run in an election cycle if you have more than, can you explain it better than me? Okay, so me and Mr. Latin had many conversations about this because I was appointed. I got appointed, I only had 9 months left. So my next election cycle was my cycle. So I'm on my 4-year track. If perchance I got appointed and I had 3 years left, well, then 1 year, we're gonna run into an election cycle. I have to run in that to continue to fill the appointment for the rest of the time, but my original election cycle stays the same. So then the next 2 years, I would have to be on an election cycle again. And then it would be for 4 years.
So just to use, like, Mr. McIntyre was appointed in 2023. And then he ran again. So if he would have been elected, his 4-year, he would have to run again in 2 years?
Yep.
Yes, in 26.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
So-
I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
And
Okay,
you will
they
have
do
to-
that to keep it spaced out. So there's,
No,
Because it was taking over for an appointed position.
Oh, if I would have been appointed.
yes, you would have been, if you would have been appointed instead of him,
Yeah.
you would have run.
Yeah.
Yes, but then you keep to your original 4-year cycle at all times. But if there's a weird appointment thing in there and there's another election cycle in between your 4 years, you have to go through that to stay as the appointed member on the board.
So you're
Because, Mr.
basically-
Whistler, your district was created in 2022.
Yes.
It was an appointee and then it went, and then it was, so it's up for reelection in 2026, your district.
Yes, so I just want to make sure, yeah, 28. Yes, he's on the original schedule.
Okay, that's fine.
Now, you scared me for a minute.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I just did that.
So I know that's kind of as clear as mud, but that allows, like, sometimes you'll have people that say, I've been a school board member for 16 years. Well, they got appointed. They still have to go through that little election cycle to stay as the appointed member on the board, and then they start their original date.
Okay.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that, I think there was some confusion about it, so I just
Okay,
wanted to
we're all
make sure. Okay,
So-
thank you.
So,
So you have a motion and a second. Can we?
so this wording is still correct, though.
Oh, the wording's fine.
Oh.
I just thought there was some confusion last month when we were talking about it. I wanted to clear it up.
So we have a motion by trustee Farr. We have a second by trustee Carson. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item 33 for possible action. Discussion and possible action on agenda items for future board meetings and or information item requests, including a summary by the superintendent. This is being presented by Board President and Superintendent Tim Logan.
Thank you. Just kind of items that are coming up. For one, our board meeting next month is on February 25th at the PLC in Silver Springs at 6:30. We're going to be working on our state of the district, and hopefully that's ready to be presented this next month. We'll have a few facility kind of upgrades that we're going to want to bring forward. The recruitment and retention plan update for the following season will be brought forward. We're looking at the 26-27 school calendar will be coming forth. We have a lot of policies again for first and second readings. And we can discuss that with the board president later of how many we're bringing forward. And then one thing that does need to occur, the district performance plan has just been changed where it is due on April 15th, tax day. I love that. But So what we need to do is revisit our district performance plan to come up with goals. So we'd like to do a board workshop sometime before the next board meeting to discuss those goals. I know that most of you, I think, have that starting at around 4 o'clock. So I think what's best is that President Hendricks and myself will come up with a date. And we'll let you know. We'll obviously advertise it like we do with any other board meetings, make sure the public's aware of it as well. But the nature of workshops are to have kind of a little more of an informal discussion, be able to talk the goals. But those goals in DPP, when we're ready, typically come back to your actual board meeting for a vote. So the workshops just kind of start hitting that end. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the next month and next board meeting.
I had an agenda item request, so it relates to the state of the district. So policy BN, excuse me, says we're gonna have that presentation before the February meeting or at the February meeting.
The plan is to have it at the February meeting.
Yeah, and then so in accordance, also in accordance, this board is responsible to the people for whose benefit the district is established. I think we need a cohesive long-range plan. So to better understand the current state of the district, I request additional information because it does say that certain information will be presented, but not limited to. So I would like information on our testing. So what grades are tested, what tests are used at what grade. So I can hand all that in here as far as exactly what it is, but I'm asking for additional information to be presented.
May I ask a quick question? President, have they already been printed? The state of the district reports, because he's asking for additional information to be in them, and I know that we print them and hand them out, so I don't know if it's already been printed.
This year has not been printed yet. And we do, it's outlined typically what it's looked like before. So if there's things that you're wanting added, I guess I need to know what that is so that we can try to get it in there. So I hear information on testing. There is information on testing in there. So if you're looking for something specific, you're going to need to spell that out for us a little more.
I will. I've got it all spelled out here. Okay. So I'll get you a copy of this. But quickly, it's what grades are tested, what tests are used, and what grades. What is the frequency of each test? How does Lyon County rank against other districts in Nevada and other states that use the same criteria that we use? And then I like this information in graphical and tabular form, so it's easier to, just look at it and discern where we are in as a comparison. So I'll present all this so you know exactly what I'm asking for.
It's large what you're asking for. You're asking for all the testing data, grade levels. That testing book that we gave in November, it's got what you're asking for, and it's already 80 pages or something. So you are asking for a large document.
No, what grades are tested? What tests are used?
Yeah, that's in yes.
Okay, so, and then what's the frequency of the tests?
You want that digital form?
It's always been I don't have it with me, but it's always been a little pamphlet. The idea is kind of high level so that if people ask you kind of where we're at, that you're able to go, this is how many students we have. These are the tests. I'm good with test grades, what tests we have, but how we rank against other states. You're going to start getting into ACT. You're going to start getting into MAP. It just starts getting larger and larger when you start going there. But
okay, we can narrow that down to ACT and SBAC, because I know there's 8 states that use the ACT the same way that we do, not the entire nation. And I don't want to compare us to anyone except those that are using it the same way we're using it. The same with the SBAC. We have 14 states that are using the SBAC. So I want to compare us to those other 14 states. But more importantly, I think is comparing us to other districts in Nevada that are using exactly the same thing we're using here.
Again, we have this. It's in that testing one from November. We'll bring forward what we think you're
Okay.
proposing. The other nice thing is you're the board president and you and I can meet before and kind of review it.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of break it out for us is what I'm trying to do, get it to where it's easy for a layman to just look at it and understand it rather than having to sift through an 80-page document.
We will try to put together what we think you're asking for. And then we'll need you to give an update on it.
You and I can talk about that.
There you go.
Okay. Trustee Carson.
I would also like to add want to agenda item added for discussion and possible action on the February agenda. I would like an organization chart showing stats from 2013 versus current 2025 stats. The organization chart should show all district employees, their positions, so all the stuff we already have. And information as requested below. I have the paper you guys can have. I have included my requests, how to generate the organization chart. A template can be found in agenda item 16 of the February 2013 school board meeting. Using the template from the 2013, make an organization chart for the current period, breaking down all employee positions which are currently held on or open. Include individual total salary and total, not with names, please don't put names, and total compensation costs for all employee positions individually and by area or department currently held or open compared to 2013 to 2025 in tabular and or graphical form. Highlight currently held and open positions which have been added in administrative since 2013. So what's the difference in administration between those two and how many more people do we have? Show the total number of administration positions and the total cost of all the administration positions for 2013 versus 2024, and to provide district student enrollment on a yearly basis from 2013 to the present time. All of information in tabular and or graphical form. List all sources, data, information.
Might I ask
the paper?
Ms. Carson, may I ask why?
What, because I would like to just know how much we went up, like how many students do we have compared to the teachers? Like, did we have 3,000 students and administration, how much we had back then compared to what we have now, and how much more administration we have compared to the student ratio? Let's say student ratio and money-wise, how much it went up. Now, I'm not going to say interest in all the other stuff has made everything go up, but I'd like to know just what's going on.
I'm just curious how long that will take and how much.
And it might not be a February thing, but.
We can work on it, but I will say that the last two things you guys asked for are massive reports, so something has to give, but.
Is it to be that extensive, maybe you could narrow it down, because I feel like if it's that huge, it's taking a lot of resources from the staff. So
Yeah,
I'm wondering, like, maybe if you could pinpoint specific ones that are most important, because when I was just listening, I felt like that was a very big list.
Yeah.
It sounds like she just wants to know where we were and how we have.
Just administrative staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and how, and where we're going, and if we are like getting too many district employees compared to the amount of students. Because where I'm going is there's some reason that the teachers and everybody have, on your own surveys, have rated the district lowest. And so what I'm doing, don't do any surveys, because I'm collecting questions from some of the teachers so that we can do a survey, so it will tell us what we're doing wrong. So, yeah, don't do a survey with the teachers till you talk with me and we get some of my questions on a survey.
So
anyways.
I will say in the past that if an item takes an extensive amount of time, that's usually voted on by the board. But again, I'm just throwing that out there. Both these items are extensive. Not the state of the district is in the fact that we always do it, but if you're really going down the route, I think that you're wanting, it starts getting into a heavy time and money consuming item. If it's that important, there we are, but understand that we may not be able to get to all of our other duties at the same time.
Perhaps you could pick a few of them and not that whole big chunk, because that's really overwhelming. I was overwhelmed listening. So,
So
that would be much more fair to the staff to take it in baby chunks.
So this has been done before. This org chart was done in 2013.
We have an org chart from 2013 is what it sounds like. I'll have to go look at the board agenda. I haven't seen it, but.
So the template's there and
then we have the current one that we sent out, I don't know, 6 months ago.
Yeah, they don't even compare to each other.
And that's fine. We have those, but when you start getting into salary comparisons, we don't even have some of those jobs that were there in 2013. They may have been split into two different ones.
Well, all the data for the salaries is online for all positions from back in 2012, 13, all the way up through 2022. So it's all available online.
I'm not saying that it's not
I
doable.
printed it out.
It's a lot what you're asking. I'm not saying it's not doable. We get what you want, but understand.
Copy and paste?
It's copy and paste. That's all that we need to do. You're right.
Mr. President.
I don't think so. It's just copy. Sorry. Go ahead.
Trustee Farr?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to make a point of order that recently it was brought to my attention that one of our board trustees spoke directly to the superintendent and demanded that he call an emergency board meeting. That one trustee does not speak for the board president speaks for the board, and then that should have been left at the board president's discretion and not from an individual trustee to give directions and orders to the superintendent. He is an employee who works on behalf of the board, not individual members. I just want to make sure that's clear. That you understand.
There were 3 board members that wanted the meeting. And so there was a negotiation because we could have had the meeting.
So there.
I'm just going to interject because
here
this is an off topic for this time. It's not agendized and shouldn't be discussed without a proper notice to the public.
Go ahead.
We negotiated.
So
The 3 board members backed out.
Mr.
any other
Hendricks?
further agenda items? Yes.
I would like to say something. If you guys can make your request not so humongous and gargantuous and take them bit by bit, I'm okay with that. If it's every single thing you stated all at once, then I would like to vote on it.
Richard, who are you to be saying you're okay with?
I'm a board member sitting here.
You're just one board member.
That's right. That's why I
just
put my
one
opinion.
board member,
And if we want to vote on it, it will be at the board's discretion. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'm okay with all the agenda items that were just requested.
Yeah, I'm okay with them. I think we need to see where we've been and where we're going. I think that sounds very good to me.
So we're good with that?
Yeah, you're gonna have to give me what you're needing, I guess, but I can tell you again, in the past, if it's a large item, it's usually a board vote saying that this is what we'd like to bring forward.
Okay.
Those who would like, and again, small items, not typically, I can just say that that's the reason why this is agenda
Okay,
item
let's,
is.
we'll put it to a vote. Who wants to have their agenda items, the 2 agenda items that were just requested, go forward as requested?
Aye.
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 Nay.
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 Okay. That passes 4-2.
4-3.
There wasn't really a second to your motion. I just want to point out.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we pass all of those as requested. Any second?
I'll second your motion.
Okay. Trustee Hendricks request. Trustee Whistler seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Are you gonna have some discussion?
Okay, let's have some discussion.
So in a previous life, I worked for the Nevada Department of Wildlife, and of course, the state agency, like all of them, was under the auspices of a commission. And at various times during my career, I would see members come onto that commission and ask for information from the agency that was simply overwhelming. And it was very, very difficult to work through that. And I'm listening to Ms. Carson cite what she's looking for, and I couldn't, without it sitting in front of my face, I'm not sure everything that she's asking for, but it sounded really, really overwhelming. And I think there's nothing wrong with analyzing where we're at and where we might need to go. But I think the requests need to be reasonable of the staff. And I'm not sure those are because I don't have them in front of me. I'm hearing 5 minutes of stuff. And I just think that maybe this board is overwhelming the staff with a request. Maybe we can work through this information and try to get bits and pieces of it. But to think that you're going to have this for the February meeting, I think is completely unreasonable.
I think the reason for asking for all of it at one time is so that you can see it all at one time. Taking it in bits and pieces doesn't really give you a clear picture.
And I think
And
it would
that's
be
why-
good to have like what Tom wants. If we're going to have that special meeting at the PLC and we're going to be making our goals, we need it. We need it to be making goals.
Okay, so are both of you going to be asking for staff to have that information to you by February? I think that's unreasonable.
Well, you could do it by
Trustee
March
Carson?
or something.
I can do mine at a March meeting or even April meeting. That
Yeah,
does not bother me.
Let's.
Because if we do two big ones, that's gonna be a big,
Okay, I think you and I can talk and not violate open meeting law. I can talk with, or the three of us can talk with the superintendent. Look at the scope of what it's gonna take to do this, and maybe we both do one or the other of
Yeah.
those two and postpone the other one for the following month.
I think the state of the district is the one that needs to be done. It is by board policy. We need to have it in February. That's the one that I would personally like to work towards. It's also got the data that you're looking for the board workshop and goals.
Okay.
That the other one, if you're able to give us at least more time, and I need clear direction, because I
Yeah.
agree. That was a list I didn't quite catch.
And Mr. President, I think Mr. Bull brings up a good point. It's hard to say right now how long it's going to take or the scope of it
Yeah.
until the people who are the experts get into it. It's kind of like when the government produces a document, and the bottom of the document says respondent burden is 15 to 20 minutes. It's because they know they've done the research on how long it would take to provide that information. I don't think we can get an answer right now other than eventually down the road, we can get
It
that.
sounds like it's already been done earlier on. We just quit doing it.
Well, I think possibly, if there's some administrators that were around during that time, 2013, they could probably give us some insight into actually how much time it took to create that organization chart. So I think that's possibly one
Then let's
avenue
not
to
have this for
getting an
February.
idea about what it's going to take
let's take this off of February's,
and put it towards March.
March or April. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's more reasonable.
Mhm.
And with some of the information that you're asking for, there's also going to have to be additional information as to what additional laws have come into play that have required additional staff and so
Yeah.
forth. So you need to be able to temper that data with real stuff.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
But
So
there is a
that,
current motion on the floor, excuse me. I don't mean to interrupt.
sorry.
Ms. Carson, you have to amend.
Okay.
The motion has to be amended too.
Oh,
So I made the motion, so I'm going to amend my motion that my agenda item request holds for the February meeting, and that Trustee Carson's will be delayed to the following month. Okay,
You're the one that seconded.
I'll amend my motion.
okay, so that's my amended motion. Do I have a second?
He seconded already.
No, he's re-motioning.
Okay. I just.
I amended my motion.
Yeah, I amended mine too.
You amended your second?
Yes.
Okay, so you're seconding my amendment. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that passes 6-1. Trustee Peterson voted nay. Okay. Good? Okay, so no further business. Oh, public participation. Hold on, let me get this. I gotta read this thing here. I think McIntyre, Mr. McIntyre. Public participation. Items not listed on the agenda. At this time, the public is invited to address the board on items not listed on the agenda over which the board has jurisdiction. No action may be taken on any subject raised during public comment until the matter has been properly placed on the agenda for a properly noticed meeting pursuant to NRS 241. If you wish to speak, please step up to the front table, be seated, and state your name. Your comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per person and must fall under subjects within the board's jurisdiction and control. In consideration of others, avoid repetition or designate a spokesperson to speak on behalf of your group. Although this board does not restrict comments based on viewpoint, comments will be prohibited if the contents are willfully disruptive, slanderous, amount to personal attacks, or interfere with the rights of other speakers. Comments made during this time are monitored by the board chairperson. Mr. McIntyre.
Neil McIntyre, the second for the record. Obviously, I don't have a problem staying late for board meetings. I think I might be one of the last few residents that are still here. Don't mind staying late for the meetings, like I said, but it's really hard when they don't go very smooth. So hopefully you guys get these wrinkles figured out, because I feel like there was a lot of wasted time. Also, we're advocates, or you guys are the advocates for financial and the staff for this district. And when I hear something like that, that we're going to overwhelm our staff, I realize you guys are trying to break that up, but I don't think that's a good use of time and money. I understand you guys want the statistics, but I think, there's something you can look at on your own. Everything's transparent. If you want to look at the salaries, they're transparent in Nevada. You can go look them up. You can help out. I mean, to request our district to spend all that time and money and effort doing that, I want to see, why do you need that information and what are you going to do with it? Are you going to create a new policy over that? I mean, there's got to be a reason why you're requesting this information besides just want the information. Otherwise, you can look it up yourself. There was also a comment earlier on Washoe County. Somebody said that they went to Washoe County School Board. I doubt they went to the board meeting, because then they would know that the 17 agendized items, they meet twice a month, not once like we do. It's twice a month. So unless you guys are going to put an agendized item up there to move us to bi-monthly, which I don't recommend, because, we can handle it in one night. Unless we're going to do something like that, then I don't like comparing us to Washoe County. They're a bigger organization. They've got a lot more students, and they are almost full-time employees as a board member. It's not just a one night a month deal for those guys. So thank you very much for your time.
And to the website, you go to the board. Your dad lectures us enough.
So any more public? Excuse me.
Public comment. That's a violation of open meeting law.
We're done here. Is there any more public comment? Okay. At 10:35, this meeting is adjourned.